All right, Kingkillers, we're covering chapters 93 through 97 in this episode. We discussed the aftermath of Kvothe's heroic and disturbing battle against the bandits. Then we finally arrive at the much-debated phase section of the books. We're going to talk about Kvothe losing his V-card and the epic battle he has with Felurian. We also discuss what surely will happen to Felurian when Kvothe's story spreads. It's likely something you've never thought of, but once you hear it, you're going to know it's true. And we go into the perfect role for Owen Wilson and some of the difficulties with adapting this series. So sit back and enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Kingkiller podcast. I'm Dan, got with me Tiny Tim, and wanted to make sure we put out a good episode here. I want to make sure that it's something that a 2-year-old could not do better.
I don't think that's going to be tough.
I don't either, because it would be very difficult for a 2-year-old to put out a podcast. And so like we had someone go on the Apple podcast and reviewed our podcast, and their review was so bad a 2-year-old could do better. And I think that's factually inaccurate. I do not think a 2-year-old could do better, because the going online and starting a website, starting a hosting platform, paying them. Like, what are they doing for work? I mean, I guess they could get the money from their parents, but I mean, that's asking a lot for a 2-year-old. But, starting it all, like recording it, the recording method, the microphones, the computers, it's a lot of work for a 2-year-old. The editing, that's time consuming. Like, the 2-year-old's going to do like 8 hours of editing. That's a lot of work.
How is the 2-year-old also learning how to edit? I mean, I've had 2-year-olds, and they can't do a podcast.
Yeah, I think it's an inaccurate review. And it's a review. I would give that review 0.5 stars out of 5. And so to your review's worse than our podcast. How about that?
I think the review is something a 2-year-old might be able to do.
It's one sentence. There's no period at the end of the sentence. 2 is the number 2. It's not even spelled out. So that's pretty easy. That I think a 2-year-old could do. I think you can find plenty of 2-year-olds that could type that sentence out.
Oh, there you go. I mean,
No, it'd be funny is any of our listeners who like to be trolls. One thing you guys can do on there is go on to the Apple podcast, and for a review, just have like a bunch of reviews come in that say like, so good a 2-year-old couldn't do better. Like, so like, for people for whoever reads reviews, but like, so people could go on there and read the reviews, and they're like, why does everybody keep saying that it's better than what a 2-year-old could do? It doesn't even make sense.
Why is the measuring meter for quality based on a 2-year-old's ability? I like it.
It's only our second bad review. I don't even really get like people contacting me with negative information. The first review we got was a long time ago, and that person was mad. Said, let me see what it said on that one.
Oh,
Whatever prompted these guys to put together a podcast baffles me. Between using the F word like a comma and using the term box to describe a woman's anatomy in the first episode, the show actively appalled me.
Appalled.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's so fucking great. The best part is she thought I was all right, but you guys were bringing me down. Like, she goes, this podcast represents some of the worst when it comes to fandoms. Let me see. There seems to be one member of the trio of hosts that is more invested than the other two. I genuinely hope you find a higher caliber of co-hosts as you're complicit in their generally horrific podcast presence.
Wow.
Now, the first part of that, like, I don't agree with at all. I think that was lame and stupid and nerdy, and you're super sensitive. But that next part, man, I've always felt that I need a higher caliber of co-hosts, and that you guys it's generally horrific, your podcast presence. That spot on. Fucking just that is just written so succinctly and so perfectly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
I would still argue similarly to the previous review, which is it seems to be confused because it starts out with whatever convinced them to get together to do a podcast baffles me. It's pretty clear. We're talking about a book.
Yeah.
It was the book
yeah.
that brought us together.
I don't know why this is so confusing. We wanted to talk about these books and put out episodes for people to listen to as we talk about these books. Kind of bounce some of these ideas off of other people as well. Pretty straightforward why people do these kind of things.
I like the actively appalled me. That makes me feel really good. Like we really accomplished something.
Yeah, and it's great because like in that prologue to the podcast episode, we talked about how we would say some things that would offend some people, and that is a very good description because that I wouldn't have even expected that to offend someone. Because it's said, and the way he says it, he's like, couldn't get in her box. It was meant to be like a cheesy line, like a cheesy joke.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was in reference. We were talking about the thrice locked box, and we were like, "What's in the box?" And Fitz was like, "Maybe it's Denna's box." And it was meant to be a cheesy line, said in a cheesy way, and that actively appalled her. And also I love the F words like a comma. Fucking nail that. Fucking A, man.
Yeah, well, so I forgot that was a review of an actual episode of like the prologue, right?
Yeah, the very first episode. No, the very first episode. Yeah.
Well, I mean, set the tone early.
Hey, what's amazing is that person they gave us 1 star. So all of our reviews are 5 stars except for we got these 2 1 stars. And then but I like the fact cuz like to get to that part where Fitz said box, like you have to listen to the whole episode. Like she got all the way to the end. It was like, what? You were actively appalled for almost like it's probably like 2 hours the first episode.
So was writing the review actively appalled and just kept sweating, getting more emotionally worked up, just letting the rage really work through her penmanship, and then then landed it on the box comment.
Well, I can't stop listening yet because then my review would not be an accurate and fair portrayal. I have to at least give the entire first episode a chance. Even though it's actively appalling me.
I respect that, and I hope it does continue to actively appall this individual. Hope they never forget it.
That review, I give that 2 stars. I mean, like some of the stuff was real nerdy, but again, just nailed the higher caliber of co-hosts that I need. I mean, just nailed it, and I clearly am the one of the trio of hosts that is more invested than the other 2, and I'm just better, and I deserve better, and you should provide a better co-host for me, Tim.
Well, did Fitz host the prologue? Did he do the introduction?
Yeah.
Well, maybe she's talking about him.
No. She's clearly talking about me.
Clearly, because that's what you want it to be.
Yeah, because I'm the one that's dropping the theories and all that stuff. Yeah, it's 100% me.
Oh, I'd have to listen to the prologue again, But actually, I'm not that invested to really understand this person's perspective. Even though we're talking about it, but there's some gems in there, though, for sure.
But
I would give it. I agree with that 2-star review of their review.
But if any of you guys want to troll those people, it would make me laugh.
Yes, I would also enjoy it.
Yeah, I like a good troll. But so we are diving into chapter 93 to start this episode. Just got done with the big bandit fight. And in chapter 93, Kvothe recovers from his injuries, as well as Hespa and Daydan and Tempe and Martin. And then they get the mayor's lockbox back with all his money, and they start to head out of the woods.
Yep. He recovers real quick, right? And they're pretty well. Their nips are fully blown off at this point. After what he did out there.
Yeah, that's why they have to recover. I mean, I'm
up.
surprised they don't mention it, but blown nips is clearly that's gonna take a couple of days to recover from.
Yeah, so they're lingering from that as Kvothe. Maybe Kvothe would recover quicker from I guess 14 hours of sleep, right? That's a long respite.
Yeah,
he was fit. He was fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, slept for 14 hours, and then they found him unconscious, cold to the touch, covered in blood. And they put him in the bandit surviving tent, and warmed him up and left him. And then he wakes up fit as a fiddle. And the other people, Hespa took an arrow in the leg, probably near the knee, and Daydan had a deep gash along one of his shoulders, which was fairly lucky, considering he'd rushed the sentry barehanded. And then Martin had a lump on his forehead from when Kvothe elbow dropped him.
Oh, yeah, when he was kicking the shit out of him because he was talking about Telu.
Yeah, he was all caught up in his prayers when Kvothe needed him to get his shit together. So Kvothe elbow dropped him in the head.
He was kicking him. He was throwing him around. I do like picturing that he, while he's doing all this crazy shit with the dead bandit, he's taking his time to do some pile drivers on Martin.
he's in the heart of stone, and he's like climbing up a tree and jumping down, doing elbow drops, but emotionless, like just completely devoid of emotion while he does it.
I wonder if there's ever been a wrestler that did that took on that posture, right? Do all the crazy stuff they do, but no facial expression, no like wowing the crowd.
Every time the crowd cheers him, he stops and like turns to him and shushes him. Shh, shh, quiet down. I'm trying to concentrate here.
I do like picturing that and like a portrayal of this. Like he's taking his time to put leg drops and fucking power drivers and shit.
The concentrator. He's just really focused at all times. They announce before he comes on stage, like, please keep your applause to yourself.
He ends the fight with a namaste.
Yeah.
I like it. I like this guy. Yeah. He's in touch with his chi. Yeah, he's like what do you call it? Medicine man. This is all working out, dude. We should be writing for the WWF right now.
Yeah, WWE.
Oh, whatever it is.
WWF's the Wildlife Federation.
Yeah, but both of them. The Medicine Man, new wrestler coming to
the World Wildlife Federation.
Coming to a not top-notch pavilion near you, wherever they wrestle.
But let's see. Then we got after I recovered from the chills, I was fine. I could tell my companions were surprised by my sudden return from the doors of death and decided to leave them to their amazement. A little mystery wouldn't hurt my reputation, which gives him some Haliax and Lanre imagery. The Lanre returning from the doors of death when Lyra brought him back.
Mm.
So it's a similar kind of imagery as far as his sudden return from the doors of death, which is ominous, obviously, considering his future trajectory.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because one of the chapters we're going to come to, there's a similar type of circumstance with like the Kvothe. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't like kind of pieced that together. It's fucking miraculous. I mean, if you're in Martin's position, right, and you see Kvothe doing what he's doing, then you see his body the way it would have been at the end, right? And then the dude comes to, and everybody else is hurt worse than he is.
Yeah.
Well, and not
Yeah.
just that, the body count on the other side
Yeah.
from a guy that wasn't armed.
Yeah.
I mean,
He didn't
this is insane.
even come in the vicinity of another guy, and he killed pretty much almost all of them. But
Yeah,
yeah,
he
and
wasn't even. I mean, well, I guess he almost got hit with an arrow, right?
Yeah.
He did get hit, but then he nearly
Yeah.
took one in the face.
yeah,
But, I mean, outside of that, he was out of harm's way, basically.
yeah, yeah, and then Tempe was unhurt, unruffled, and unreadable, just like the concentrationist or whatever we're calling that wrestler.
Yeah, Tempe's a good example. Yeah, Tempe is a great example of this dude. A lot of his
Except for the laughing,
idiosyncrasies.
like, if you like someone comes in there like with no ass, he's gonna be fucking rolling on the ground laughing.
He's got a special place in his heart.
His weakness is he fights if he's put up against his ultimate enemy is the assless man. Some guy coming in with a fucking flat as a board ass.
I would want to see
Tempe fucking dying laughing.
Like all of the same imagery. Guy comes into the ring with a golden screw on his belly button and literally
he starts screwing it. And Tempe's
off.
like waving his hand,
Sweating.
saying, "No, don't do it." Unscrews it, and then Tempe just starts laughing, dying. The guy goes and just pushes him over and pins him easily. It's
that's how he loses the belt.
Yeah, that's his kryptonite.
Dude, I love this. I love this arc. This would last like a whole. What do they do? Like seasons for the
Yeah,
the WWE
yeah, and then
or
like
whatever?
maybe like Tempe's fighting other guys, and then the fucking guy with the screw in his belly comes out, fucks him up. So then Tempe's got to start fighting blindfolded.
Yeah,
See?
I like
all
it.
kinds of stuff, man. We got
It
a
just keeps going.
whole thing going. Hit us up, Mr. WWE.
Vince McMahon or something.
Yeah, we got a whole fucking arc for you.
Well, I can't. We just kind of gave it all to him. But if you want the real details,
Yeah, trust
the real
me.
in betweens,
You're missing
gonna
a
need it.
lot of subtext. Oh shit. But yeah, and then we had the number killed. Daydan killed 1. Tempe killed 2, and then there's 3 survived the lightning, tried to escape. Martin brought down 1 of those, and then Tempe claimed the other 2. So Tempe ended up killing 4, Martin 2, Daydan 1, and then there were 17 burned, broken, or otherwise ravaged by the lightning. Of those, 8 had been dead or wounded unto death beforehand. So Kvothe killed at least 8, possibly 17 if he actually called down the lightning. If he was responsible for the lightning, then he killed 17. If that was an act of Telu or angels or something along those lines, then he's not so much responsible for it. But he killed at least 8.
But to that group that was there with him, it looks like he's fucking Tarlin, man.
Yeah.
He's a magician.
Yeah, to them, he called down lightning. Yeah. They're not assuming that his angels came and did it. It's just us knowing, between some of the context that it's possible that Telu or the angels actually did show up because of the fact that Cinder looked up, went into the tent, and then disappeared without a trace. It seems like, it could have been that, Haliax did his little whirlwind sand thing, came and fucking picked him up and dipped out.
Well, and that does seem like what happened. At least that was my thought. And then there's the 1 sentry that apparently watched the whole thing from a northeast piece of the ridge and left. So there's someone to tell this story that had like an eagle eye view of the whole thing.
Yeah,
pretty cool. Spreading some more legend of Kvothe around.
Yeah,
to a bar near you.
Yeah, and it would be extremely gruesome retelling of the story. It's kind of one of those ones you probably wouldn't tell anybody because you'd be like, no, that dude's messed up. I don't want him hunting me down. He was stabbing dudes from 200 yards away or however far away he was. 100 yards.
I mean, I wonder how clear it is. I mean, yeah, what would that look like?
You just see guys like just running around, like grabbing their eye and their throat, and they're fucking
blood
kidney,
gushing
and
out.
yeah, blood just gushing out. Be like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, it's like they're getting hit with arrows, yet
Yeah,
there's no arrows flying. And then you see a guy stabbing the shit out of. Oh man. Well, it's
yeah,
more like they're getting hit with a knife, really, because that's what he was using. But man, yeah, that's some brutal. That's some brutalness.
yeah. It would be messed up. If you could see Kvothe doing it, it would be even more messed up. But even if you couldn't see it, if he was out of your view, you would still see like guys going down, then lightning fucking come crashing down and kill everybody. You'd be like, who are these guys? Like they just took out my entire group, every one of us. You know, we had, what was it, 4 plus 2, 7. He's 8. That's 26. So like 27 guys they had.
Yeah, and well fortified and
Yeah.
trained.
And they just fucking wiped him out in a matter of like a minute, 2 minutes.
I don't know.
That's just
I mean,
wild.
Was it that quick? I mean, I guess
It would have had to have been. Like, I mean, Dadan and Hespa would be dead if it took a long time.
Yeah, that's fucking nuts, man. Which, by the way, Dan, I mean, it's a good combination where he's actually pretty fucking brave to do what he did, but also stupid.
Yeah.
Just rushing the dude without fucking sword pulled,
Well,
or weapon in hand.
At that point, though, I mean, it sounds like the options were rush him barehanded or die. Like, if you don't have time to pull out your sword, you know, you can't just stand there and wait for the guy to pump you full of arrows.
Yeah.
But yeah, he took out a dude barehanded. Dadan's, you know, he's a bit of a badass. If he was, as long as he's not fighting Tempe, getting smacked around across the face. But yeah, so they leave the one guy alive, and then, you know, they didn't feel like going anywhere and, you know, continuing on chasing him down or anything. So they just agreed to let him go and spread the word about everybody else. And then, you know, the leader's body was the only one that wasn't gathered. And, you know, they saw him go into the large tent, but a big ass tree fell on it. And obviously the leader is Cinder. And so they just kind of left that to the side. And then Kvothe goes and gets the voodoo body. And he's like, I looked at the body for a long time before I carried it away to the south, found a quiet place under a willow and built a cairn of stones. Then I crept into the underbrush and was quietly, violently sick. Be like, yep, it's a little harder to look at a body you mutilated when you're not in that heart of stone. Probably should have dropped into the heart of stone before he did all that stuff.
Yeah. I imagine that was I imagine that was brutal. I can't. Yeah, and like knowing that you did it, the whole thing.
Yeah,
fucking brutal.
Yeah, just
He's
super gross.
This dude, man. I was gonna say he's a cutthroat. I didn't want to get that direct, but Kvothe, man, he does some vicious ass shit, man. Some really vicious shit in these books.
Yeah, and just some disturbing. That's one of the most disturbing things, and it's obviously under the circumstances, it's understandable why he did it, and I don't like blame him, but like, could I do that and just like start stabbing a body and mutilating it and shit? I don't think I'd be capable of it.
No.
Who knows what I would do, like if my life was on the line, but I would be surprised if I was capable of going to that place.
Yeah, that's super. Well, I mean, yeah, he's got the control of his mind and the utility that comes out of doing it, and it was effective, and it fucking worked, and it saved everybody's life, and all that. But man, it is vicious is an understatement.
Yeah, and so then he talks about the lightning. The lightning is difficult to explain. A storm overhead, a galvanic binding with 2 similar arrows, an attempt to ground the tree more strongly than any lightning rod. Honestly, I don't know if I can take credit for the lightning strike when and where it did. But as far as stories go, I called the lightning and it came. So that's obviously the big question, is who did it? Was it Kvothe, or was it the angels, or Amir, or someone, a powerful Ruach, or someone along those lines, or Aleph, someone helping him along. And given how precarious the situation was, how close he was to death, I'm not sure that he would be capable of that kind of feat. And he like passed out and shit. I mean, when it happened, like, so could he have done it? It seems like it would have been extremely difficult for him to accomplish that, given his physical and mental state at that moment.
Also, given the images of the aftermath,
Yeah,
it's man, it like the whole ground is ripped up. It kind of reminded me of the Dracus. You know, when the Dracus went freaking apeshit crazy and started tearing shit up.
very similar. Yeah, he said it looked like a madman, or it had been plowed by a madman or raked by the claws of some huge beast.
Yeah,
and just massive, just destroyed their entire encampment, destroyed all the tents. I think they said one was saved, but all the rest were destroyed. And then and also too, the fact that a gigantic limb fell directly on the bandit leaders, on Cinder's tent, and right after he went in there, a giant limb the size of another tree fell on top of his tent. So that also makes me think that it could have been some other force, and they tried to kill him too. Just because of the fact that of all the tents for a big ass limb the size of a tree to land on, if you're trying to kill Cinder, that would be the one for it to land on.
Yeah, it feels. I mean, I love the way he writes it. I love the circumstantial evidence that he gives for all these different reasonings, because I think it's a combination of all of it. You know, well, it's an easy thing to say because that's effectively what we're given. But I think that's basically what we're left with, is a combination of all of these influences together, and especially what you mentioned about the tree falling on basically Cinder and trying to take him out. Kvothe didn't know it was Cinder.
No.
What is it? His sleeping mind took over. Like it? No, he was not. He was barely able to function at that point.
It's possible, it could just work out and be a coincidence that way, but it also it just aligns with that some force like the angels.
Well, and then what you were talking about, or what I was talking about when we did the chapter, there were so many different ways that he was. The ways that he was grabbing the bow and all these different things he was doing, what his laugh sounded like, it was like it was like an out of body experience in many circumstances, which to me hints at there's something else involved. There's someone else influencing some of the things he's doing. Somehow he's like, had the bow back in my hand. I have no idea how it got there. Like things of that nature, where I know he's deep in the heart of stone, and that kind of gives reasoning for all of it. That gives reasoning for him to feel that way, like an out of body type experience. But it also gives more reasoning towards what we end up seeing with what you're talking about with an influence of an Aleph, or some angels. And Martin's praying, right? If it works.
Yeah, that's what, like, the fact that he was praying, the fact that Cinder looked like he looked up to the sky and then disappeared.
Like he did before.
The limb fell directly onto a limb the size of a tree, fell onto his tent right after he went in there. Like, those kind of things make me lean towards it was probably an angel or someone in that vein that did it. But it's still possible that Kvothe did it.
But and again, what's so great about it is the imagery sticks with you forever after reading this chapter. But you also don't forget, at least in my mind, I still remember, like, he didn't really create it, or did he? Like, there's that question, and the question sticks with you, and it's short the way he explains it, but he gives those different ways to explain it, while also making it quite clear something more was involved here, and could it just be lightning? That's why it's such a great choice as well, because lightning strikes, bro.
Yeah,
it does, and it was storming and blah blah. It's a big tree, all that.
That's one that I would be surprised if we don't get an answer an answer on what exactly happened there, because I do think he's going to run into angels, or an angel at least. And so I think we're going to get some clarification on a couple of those things, like whether someone's been helping him along or not, guiding him. Like, did someone save him from the Chandrian? Did someone save him in Tarbean? Did someone save him here? I think we're going to get answers on those kind of things.
What I'm hoping is whoever it was does a little head nod and goes, "You like that lightning, right?
Yeah.
You like that? Did you like that?" And then high five afterwards.
Yeah.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet.
They high five over it.
And running high five. They walk. they do like turn their backs on each other and just start walking away like they're gonna be angry at each other, and then they turn and they're like smiling, like, "Nah, I got you," and then they run and they go run, high five.
Okay. It seems there's a lot more behind it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great scene. I come up with fire, man. Fire scenes. Shit's lit on fire.
Shit's lit on fire. Okay.
But then we get they decide to stay for 3 days, and then with our job completed, the tensions plaguing our group faded, the rain stopped, and we didn't need to be bashful about our fires anymore, and as a result, Martin's cough was improving. Daydan and Hespa were civil to each other, and Daydan stopped about 3/4 of his incessant jackassery towards me.
Nice.
So I'd say 75%
for,
gone. Only 25% jackassery left. It's pretty good. Pretty good number.
That's pretty, dude. That's saying a lot about how incessant this motherfucker is, because he knows what Kvothe just did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we'll get to it here, but
Martin tells him, but
still, just like being a fucking pain in the ass. That's wild.
Yeah, despite the fact that they were feeling better about things, it also changed the dynamic. What he did, they were clearly a bit apprehensive around him. They felt uneasy around this dude that just killed, to them, just killed 17 guys by going voodoo doll on a dead body, killed a bunch of guys, and then called lightning down on the rest. That would be a guy that would make you a little easy, especially when it's a guy that has a bit of a temper that you've seen come out, and he gets a little snippy with you at times. You're like, man, I don't know about this guy.
Well, and I think he really missed an opportunity destroying the wax moments, because what you just described, and then he's got a little mommet of you. Like,
yeah.
Right? Man,
well, if they found that wax mommet, they're probably gonna try to either take off or kill him in his sleep.
Yeah.
You're not taking the chances at that point. Like, then it's not even like, man, I'm a little uneasy around this guy, to like, nope, this guy's a threat to my life.
Yeah, you're getting that fuck out of there. Would be my guess. But if you knew something,
but he also said he could. He's also like, he's like, I can track you down anyway.
Well, yeah,
he's told them that. So at that point, it's just like, man, we better take this guy out before he kills us. He's already made voodoo dolls for us, and we just saw what he did with that other voodoo doll, a dead body. But he can do that shit with the wax. If he can do that shit with the wax, he can kill us from 100 yards away.
Man, you really got to be his friend. Stop being a fucking incessant ass. Would be one step in the right direction, I would say.
Yeah, but I mean, they do build up some camaraderie. They become better friends. Just little tension, but for the most part, it's happier times after that shit. And then there's it said Tempe didn't comment on it. He didn't say anything, and he's like, at first, he's like, it seemed like he didn't hold it against me. Looking back, I realized how little I truly understood the Adem. But at the time, all I noticed was that Tempe spent less time helping me practice the Katan and more time practicing our language and discussing the ever-confusing concept of the Lithani. It's also interesting because they don't even mention that he started teaching him the Katan. I assume because from the time they go to Crossin and they go to the bar and they get in the fight and Tempe tells him about the Lithani, 3 days go by And then they find Tempe comes up and tells them, I found the dead sentries. So if he's been teaching him the K-Tan, he's only been doing it for a couple of days.
Well, he was he was instructing him, right? I mean, he was instructing
No, not
him when he
before
was...
that. Like he literally
Well, that's not the
only
right word. He was more correcting the annoying.
he did one. No. He corrected him once before that, and it was one little thing with his hip. He was like, you're not turning your hip right. And he's like, turn it like this. That was it. He never taught him anything else. And then he apparently, after he started teaching him the Lithani that day, he must have been teaching him the K-Tan for a couple of days. Because the timeline doesn't work any other way. There's no other times where he was teaching him. Because we've heard, he already explained the only other time that he taught him was that one little thing, and that was he was just correcting something that annoyed him. So apparently Tempe had started teaching him the K-Tan, though, after that moment. When he decided to teach him the Lithani, he apparently started teaching him the K-Tan as well. But then they go and they got their equipment back, and they also go and get his loot. So he slips back into playing his music again. And I love the aspect of he at first he thought Tempe didn't care for the music because he always would leave when he bring out his loot case.
Yeah.
And then he's like, but then I began to catch glimpses of him watching me, though always from a distance and usually at least partly hidden from sight. Once I knew to look for him, I discovered he was always listening while I played, wide-eyed as an owl, motionless as a stone. It's fucking hilarious. Yeah. Knowing what we know about Tempe and what was going on, it was like Kvothe was walking up in their group in front of everybody and just like dropping his pants and just wanking it right in front of everybody. And they're like, Tempe's like, whoa, dude, what are you doing?
He's still watching.
Like, all right, I'm out of here. Well, I equate it to like if I saw some girl, like she just like walked up in the middle of a group and just started going to town on herself. I'd probably want to take a peek and see what the fuck was going on there. And it would definitely be that kind of thing. Although after a while, there wouldn't be much enjoyment. It would be like, what the fuck, man? What is wrong with you? Stop.
Well, I like the way he describes it, because eyes wide as an owl, and like out of the corner of his eye, he's kind of watching, but in a bashful way where it's like he's embarrassed for you.
Yeah, I would be, if I saw a girl do that, I would be embarrassed for her. Be like, what the fuck is she doing? Is she on drugs? It's a great be a super awkward experience.
It's a great repay for the rereader.
Yeah, for sure. It's hilarious. And then on the third day, they decide to head out. And then they finally they go and take a look at the leader's body, and they wanted his chainmail and stuff, and he wanted to get a good look at him too, because he said that, something about him made him feel uneasy and was kind of nagging at his memory. But they clear the tree, and then Cinder's gone. There's no trace of him, no footprints, nothing. He's just gone. So it seems like, that they needed Haliax to drift them away. It was when Kvothe saw them just kind of drift away like sand. It was the Haliax was like, come to me, and they all had to go to him, and then it seemed like Haliax took them away. It could be possible that they're all capable of it, and it was just they went with Haliax, so they all went to the same place or something. Could be just something we just don't know the mechanics of it, in that all of them are capable of it, but they went with, he said, come to me for some reason that we don't understand yet. But it also could be that, Haliax is, if they get in danger, if one of the 7 gets in danger, Haliax can show up at the blink of an eye and scoot them out of there. And that could be a reason why the Amir never catch these people. Because if Cinder is not able to do what Haliax did, then you would think the Amir would catch up to him eventually in 5,000 years. That he would be caught by himself without Haliax there to save him.
Well, yeah, and it seems like that was a high probability here, right?
Yeah.
But somehow he's. I mean, maybe the circumstance that when Kavo's parents died was Haliax was making them leave, and they were reluctant. I don't know. And then this time, Cinder's ready to go. I
No,
don't know.
because they all looked up and were like, "Oh shit!" I mean, it was an
Oh yeah, yeah. I keep forgetting about
apprehensive thing, and
yeah.
so
Keep forgetting about the omen.
yeah, they all were like, let's get the hell out of here." And now it's just a matter of, do they need Haliax to do it or not? If they need Haliax to do it, then you would think that Haliax must be able to get wherever they are in the blink of an eye, because otherwise you would think one of them would be caught stranded without Haliax there to protect them. So if they can't do it themselves, then it's likely that Haliax can fucking just show up and dip them out at the blink of an eye.
I like the emphasis that is given too, because Martin gets very uncomfortable with the fact that the body's just gone.
Yeah.
And then Kvothe is like, yeah, he's being superstitious, but I won't deny that I found the missing body more than slightly unnerving as well.
Yeah, and of course, Daydan and Hespa, they didn't see what Martin saw. When he saw Kvothe do what he did, he saw that he pumped an arrow through this dude's leg, and the guy just looked down at it like a flea, a mosquito was on his leg, and just like broke the arrow off, pulled it through his leg, and just started barking orders again, like nothing happened, not even walking with a limp. And
yeah, if I remember right, as like the moment he pulled the arrow out, he looked like exactly in the direction of where they were.
Yeah, he was like, arrow came from over there. Yeah. Start shooting arrows over at them. Yeah, and that's when Kvothe had to get the bow to cut all the strings. But yeah, it would be, if you're in Martin's shoes, what Martin saw was much more messed up than what Daydan and Hespa saw. Whereas, they might have seen the guys getting, grabbing their throat and all that kind of shit, but Martin was seeing why it was happening. He was seeing what Kvothe was doing, and then he saw what happened with that with Cinder. So yeah, it would be a fucked up experience if you're Martin.
Yeah, Martin's never going to be the same.
No,
dude is scarred.
No, and then they find the lockbox, and he's like, Martin and Hespa both said they had a little skill at opening locks, and each of them took a turn at it, but neither met with any success. And then after Martin messes with it for about 20 minutes, he couldn't figure it out. And then Kvothe goes, I might as well have a try myself. I said I'd hope one of them would trick it open. Picking locks is not the sort of skill an arcanist should pride himself on. It didn't fit with the reputation I was hoping to build for myself. Carefully cultivated reputation at that, too. Like, this dude is not just building a reputation. He's building a very specific and cultivated reputation. And it does build anyways. Even the fact that he's like, this isn't going to help, build my reputation, them seeing me, go to pick the locks. But the fact that he goes up to it and thinks of Martin's story about Taborlin, and then walks up and is like, Edro, and then smacks the top and it pops open. Well, it definitely built your reputation in the exactly the way you want it to.
Yeah, it's pretty great too. I mean, because the position we're in, he gives it to, it had simply come loose. What they were doing was actually working. The wood was swollen, blah, blah, blah. So he gives all that justification. But then imagining what they saw, all these people just tried, couldn't do anything. And then Edro, the fucking little Taborlin, like she calls him, fucking made it happen.
Yeah, and you would think that it's likely that he didn't use like magic to open it. It's likely exactly what he's saying, as far as it, they had unlocked it, but it was stuck. Because when he names something, he knows he's fucking naming. He knows it, and it's an experience. Yeah, it's a crazy experience for him. Like, look at what happens to him after he calls the name the first time against Ambrose. Like, Elodin has to bring him out of that state. Or when he does it against Felurian here shortly later, he's a bawling mess after that. So like it's a massive,
not just that, dude. When he calls it, the way that Rothfuss describes it, it's he doesn't just stumble on.
He's not like looking at the box and like I know this box down to its core and every little thing about the box. I just all of a sudden I understood it and I said Edro. Like no, there's none of that.
There's not a single mention of any like physical experience, nothing whatsoever. No. So no, that's clearly not what happened. So
no,
but it's a great, it's great with also like his trooper's background, all that type of shit. He's he's a performer. And he's actually just kind of doing a little joke, and it fucking works. The fact that it works in the moment, it's just and this is another good example of like the Mary Sue type thing, right? If he was a Mary Sue, it would have opened. There's no explanation.
Yeah.
He just fucking does shit. Well, there is the explanation that it was going to open anyway if somebody else would have just fucking hit the thing.
Yeah.
But nobody thought to just hit the thing because they're trying all these other things. Yeah, and then but for them, for like that audience looking at it, it's like, well, everything works out for this guy. And then it seems like that even for Hespe and Daydan and Martin because they're watching it in the moment. But it's also, man, like you were saying, like, so a moment ago, he does all the things they just saw him do. Then he's playing the lute for a day. Like, who the fuck is this dude? And then he does this. It's just like, this dude is fucking...
Yeah.
He's unlike anyone.
That's like he said, if I was going to be an Arcanist, I might as well be a famous Arcanist. Like, and he plays it off. That's the kind of bullshitter he is, too, is when he does it, he knows that it was likely they had already unlocked it and he just jarred it loose. But he doesn't explain it to him. He's just like, good. If they think that I'm like fucking Taborlin, all the better. If this makes my, I called lightning down even more believable to them, that I literally called lightning just like I called Edro and opened this box, it's like even better. I'm perfectly happy with people believing utter bullshit about me.
I love the way it's stated, doing my best to radiate an air of solemn power.
Yeah.
I lifted the lid and looked inside. It's so full of shit.
Yeah.
Really, really well full of shit.
Yeah. It's like fucking hamming it up. But yeah, so it ends up building out his reputation. And then, he pulls out opens the box and they find a map in there, which is going to save them. Seemingly would have saved them time to get to crossing. They were running into problems, obviously, but it showed them a shortcut, which ends up leading them to Felurian. Then they find the money, and so it's all gold royals, and so each gold royal was worth 80 bits, and the entire sum was, I think, 500 talents, 500 silver talents. Yeah, 500 silver talents is the exact total. Yeah. And so that's a ton of money. I mean, this guy, when he's talking about, like, man, if I had 2 talents, like, how much stuff I could do with 2 talents or 6 talents or 10. And he's like holding 500, gold royals worth a sum up to 500 silver talents.
Well, it does mention 200 times what financed their trip.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty substantial. I mean, obviously it's a substantial sum.
Yeah. I mean, they talked about they could, you could buy yourself, a position in the court and those kind of, an officer's position, minor title, court appointment. And I bet you could buy yourself an inn.
I bet he could get a really nice cloak.
Yeah, you could buy so many cloaks, so many pockets.
Yeah,
think of all the pockets that you could put in a cloak with 500 talents.
And all can I get
get yourself like a 10 talent cloak, but with 490 pockets in there, so you could put every one of your other 490 silver talents.
It's gonna end up being a pretty heavy cloak, man.
It's like, well, what do you got in that pocket? Silver talent. What about that one? Silver talent. Oh, let me save you time. All silver talents.
This would be a great example of when you hold somebody from their feet and have all the money fall out.
Yeah, that's the next thing the person does: pick you up, shake you. Oh, if you have 490 silver talents in there, let's get a look at all of them. But yeah, and so he ends up giving when Daydan's like, how about we share a little bit of that around? He's like, does a royal each seem fair to everyone? Daydan's like, are you serious? Said the way I see it, the less scrupulous people might forget to tell Alvaron about this, or they never go back to Alvaron at all. I think a royal each is a good reward for us being such honest folk. Besides, I was hired to find a group of bandits, not destroy minor military encampment. This is a bonus for our services beyond the call of duty. Alvaron need never know about it. And then Daydan laughed and clapped me on the back. You're not so much different from the rest of us after all, he said. But, hey, man, you're just like us. I would have stole money, too. So, hey, thank you. That's a very nice compliment.
I did. It is pretty interesting the way it plays out, because it's basically what so many people would say, like, why don't we get a little skim? Let's get a little skimmy skim.
Let me get a little taste of that. Get a little taste.
And then when the dude's like, all right, well, this seemed fair, he's like, whoa, huh? It's like, this is just the thing I say now. This is who I am.
Daydan would definitely
go with it.
Daydan would definitely be the guy that like walks into a restroom and sees someone with fucking lines laid out and like, we get a little bump.
Yes, that is Daydan's style.
Let me join this party. But yeah, and then so he does it for a couple of reasons. Like, first was he wanted, buy their loyalty, so that, because obviously they would see that money, they could see that they could just take it and disappear. I mean, that's a shit ton of money. Mm-hmm. And they can retire off of that money, or position themselves where they have a career where they don't need to be a mercenary ever again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's life-changing money. And so he sees that they could just take it. And then this way, though, they get a good amount of money. They get paid well. And then they get to, feel a little honest about it. Not feel like that there's some thief that has to go run and now hiding from Mayor Alvaron for the rest of their life. And then, second, he's like, I could use the money. Both the royal I had tucked openly into my pocket, and the other 3 I'd palmed when handing out coins to the other. As I said, Alvaron would never know the difference, and 4 royals would cover a full term's tuition at the university. So that gives you another idea, as 4 royals covers one a full term. Like, it seems like it would cover a lot more than that. Is he saying a full year?
He does say a full term, but yeah, that must be what do they call
I suppose that's a year, because I mean, like his I wonder, let's see, so how many gold royals was it? Let's work it out.
He ends up with 5.
Yeah, but like there was 200 royals in there, and so he says that that's 200 is worth 500 silver talents. Okay, so that makes sense. Yeah, that's about right. And it's basically a 2-to-5 ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So for every 2 royals, that would be 5 silver talents. So 4 royals would be 10 silver talents. So that's about right. That's one term.
That is about Damn. It's more expensive than I thought.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I guess that puts it into context.
Yeah. So that's a good amount of money. I mean, if you can get one term for 4, so a full year would be like 16. 20 be a year and a term. Yeah, you could get quite a few years out of that. You could get well over probably about 20 years out of that, a little more.
I also like, by the way, how you're mentioning how Daydan's like, hey, I would have stole too. Yeah, but I stole more than you did. So
yeah,
I'm better than you. Much better than you at this.
It's like, yeah, I'm not like you. You got 1 gold talent out of this. I stole 4.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get 5, right?
No, 4. He gave himself 1 and palmed 3.
Yeah.
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 But then they start going and scavenging weapons. And so they Tempe, he gets a sword and helps Tempe helps Kvothe get a sword. He helps him pick one, and then and agrees to teach him how to use it. And then also one of the aspects of that, as far as like Tempe offering to teach him, he's like, he's telling him first, like, look, you cannot use a sword. Questioning, embarrassment. Like, I love that aspect where he's like, you can't use a sword? Like, ugh, dude, that's pretty weak of you. But when he asked Tempe if he can, if Tempe would teach him how to use it, like, he does not realize how precarious a position that he's putting Tempe in. We find out much later on, after he goes through, sees Felurian and goes to the Fae and gets out of there. Once Kvothe shows up, then he realizes how bad a spot he put Tempe in when Tempe is caught teaching Kvothe. But like, asking him this, he just thinks he's asking him a question, and it's kind of like he's not sure if Tempe's not sure he wants to do it, but he doesn't understand the gravity of the situation. Like, Tempe would rather die than to be cut away from his family, a Dimray. And that is the situation that Kvothe is putting him in by asking him this.
Well, the pause is normal in their conversation, but 10-minute pause where he's sitting there thinking how to reply, where Tempe's thinking how to reply to Kavothe's question.
Well, it would be like if someone came up and asked you if you would teach them how to do something, and you knew the consequences of teaching them doing that thing might, end up costing you your life, or eliminating you from everything you care about and being cut away from that life. And so like, it would take some serious thought on whether, the risk was worth the reward. But obviously he likes Kvothe. They've grown in friendship quite a bit, because, I mean, again, just think of the risk that Tempe is taking. He knows what the cost might be, and he's willing to do it because of he likes Kvothe. He obviously likes him that much. And then he also thinks that Kvothe needs this. Like, Kvothe is, he saw what Kvothe did with that dead body, seen the kind of power this kid possesses. And he's like, man, someone's got to fucking teach this kid, put him down the right path. And so that, he's not a danger to the world anymore. Like, this is a kid that could do some majorly fucked up shit. Someone needs to fucking help him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. And when we find out, it is interesting, again, as a reread, that you understand exactly why it takes him so long to consider and to think it out. But in Kavothe's mind, it would just be like, man, has he got a bunch of other shit to do? Or, like, what's he planning on doing on the walk home? Like, what?
Did I interrupt him when he was making like a mental list of his groceries? What the fuck's going on here? It's like, all I did was ask you to teach me how to swing a sword around. But yeah, and then Kvothe also offers to teach him how to be a prostitute in return. Or teach him how to play music, same thing. But yeah, and Martin, he takes a good number of arrows and all the bowstrings he could find, and Dedan grabs a pair of boots, armored vests, nicer than the one he was wearing, and a deck of cards and a set of ivory dice, and Hespa picked up some shepherd's pipes and a bunch of knives. She likes cutting shit up. She's a shoe chef. What is that? Is that how you say that?
Sous chef.
Sous chef? Yeah.
Yeah.
She's trained to become a very important chef in this world, apparently. But yeah, so they take their stuff and then they start heading out. And then I took less than the rest of them, a small knife to replace the one I'd broken, and a small shaving razor with a horn handle. I didn't need to shave that often, but I'd come into the habit while in the mayor's court. I'm curious if Rothfuss wrote that because he needed an example of Felurian hating iron. And so he came up with, all right, I'll have Kvothe shave. And then he put in there, like, needed an explanation for why Kvothe would have a razor with him. So he put it in here. Now I'm curious if which one came first, but because I would bet money that he came up with that after the fact and was like, okay, I need Felurian to have some examples of iron and she wouldn't have the iron herself, so Kvothe would have to bring it in. What would, and I bet you that's how the process went, and why he took a razor, and why Rothfuss brought it up here, because it seems super random.
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, I don't think we've heard of him having to bathe. We haven't heard of him shaving.
No, I can't think. It's not like a mention that he's shaving and stuff. It's not consistently mentioned or anything. If it's mentioned, I don't remember where. So it seems like just like this out of the blue mention of like, oh yeah, and I needed to get my shaving razor.
It's like, that's what? My new thing.
Yeah,
that's my new thing. I've been shaving.
Yeah. But because of it plays in with showing Felurian, that the Fae hate iron. Reinforcing that it's not just Bast and it's actually a Fae thing, that they hate iron. I think he just needed examples, and so he put that in there. But, it ends with, this may seem a little ghoulish, but it is simply the way of the world. Looters become looted, while time and tide make us mercenaries all.
Yeah, it reminds me of the famous and much heralded theologian Christopher Wallace, who once said, "Give me the loot. Give me the loot."
Oh, yeah. Give me the loot. Give me the loot.
Which is a fucking great song.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the more famous pieces of poetry in American literature.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah. That entire album is pure magic.
Yeah, it's pretty badass.
So, and then we get the next chapter, which is titled 94. Over Rock and Root. And in this chapter, they start to head out and end up getting caught in a swamp and have to sludge through that. And at the end, after they get out of the swamp, they hear a little bit of music and run into Felurian.
Yeah, they should have downloaded like the new map that shows the swamp in there.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't do that.
Yeah.
And they just like upload a reboot or a new, a new 0.0.
Yeah, hopefully like they at least like put a notification in there for everybody else. Like,
yeah,
so next guy coming through. And then also you might want to warn about Felurian.
Like, put that on the map.
Hey, look, if you're on your last leg, you got some terminal illness, maybe you want to walk through this forest.
Oh man, that's a great point.
But
that is a great point.
If you're young, got your whole life ahead of you, you might want to avoid this place. What that would be hilarious too is like if all of a sudden all these terminally ill old men start rolling through.
They're all walkers and shit.
What the fuck is happening? It's like Kvothe's story and Tempe and Martin Day-Dan telling it and shit, and they got a map of it.
They start selling to
where it's on the map. Yeah, it becomes a big tourist attraction for old men.
Yeah, they start selling like laminated maps. It's a fucking whole tourist attraction. She's basically a ride at that point.
Like everybody just every day they just walking through like every 20 old men. Just there's a constant train of 20 old men rolling through, hoping that this is going to be the night they stumble on Felurian. Be hilarious. See, this is the stuff that, is in the subtext. That's obviously what would happen. That's how this world would play out. And, this is the stuff where if Rothfuss doesn't write it, at least you got it from the podcast. And now you know how this stuff plays out.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, as technology meets this world and experience goes on, eventually, it gets out there.
You wouldn't even need technology in this. You just got that song and a map. That's all you need. Now everybody they got a map. They know where it happened. They know, and they got a song about it. And so this is And when you're selling the lyrics to that song, you put the map on the back, make all kinds of money. Business right there.
You even have the jingle for the TV commercial. Song and a map is all you need.
Yeah. You can you get that special chemical that you could put on. You could put that stuff lacquered up, all over the place where everybody could see it. You could really troll the shit out of Felurian.
I don't think that's what Kvothe wants, but I mean, again, like you point out, a very useful Uh, I mean, a very positive influence on the world is these people that are terminally ill,
Yeah,
going out with a bang.
Get to choose how they go out.
I mean, it sounds pretty tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, if she's a charitable fae creature, then maybe she'll go for it. But she seems very much concerned about her joy in the world.
Yes.
Very not so much about other people. Other than she does kind of like Kvothe, but but it is still kind of a self-centered. She loves that how he makes her feel.
Yes, she's a big. She seems to enjoy. I don't know if it's the power. That's part of it, but there's the.
She just seems like a kind of similar to a child who just likes, if a child finds something that brings them joy, like if it causes you misery, they don't seem to really care too much about that.
Actually, in some cases, it makes it even more fun.
Yeah. If you've ever been around like a little kid that like comes around and just like keeps punching you and shit and like smacking you and grabbing your hair and jumping on you, and it's like, man, dude, I'm too tired for this shit right now. But then that makes it even funnier for him. You've experienced like what Felurian feels in the world.
Yeah, but the thing is though, man, she's got some real salesmanship. Her she's very convincing.
Yeah.
Although we'll get into her magic, it's interesting. This part of what's so great about these chapters. I mean, as many times as I've read this book, every time there's new things, and I definitely was seeing some things with like new eyes, the little nuances that I hadn't picked up on before.
Yeah, it's a ton of great stuff in these next handful. But so we get in this one, they decided to trust the map and they cut straight through the west. They get caught up in the swamp, but before that, during their many breaks, Tempe began my true instructions in the K-10. So Tempe began really teaching him at this point. And then he's like, fool that I was, I'd assume he'd already been teaching me. The truth was he'd merely been correcting my more horrifying mistakes because they irritated him. Much the same way I'd be tempted to tune someone's lute if they were playing off key in the same room. So he'd started to kind of semi-teach him, just kind of showing him some of the mistakes that he's doing apparently over the last couple of days. Mm-hmm. But then they would begin the K-10 and he'd correct all my mistakes. He found 18 in the first motion alone, and there are more than 100 motions in the K-10. I quickly began to have my doubts about this apprenticeship. Talk about like this is like the kink of pedantic grammar police guys, like if there ever was one, where that shit would drive me nuts. It'd be like, dude, really? Like nope. Your knee moved at 80 degrees and it needs to move at 81 degrees.
You're saying 18 in the first motion. That's like knee, elbow, wrist, hand, face. It'd be like your chin is just a centimeter down. You gotta go up.
I saw that
that far.
Right nostril flared like 0.2 seconds too soon. It's like you got the right idea, but it's just a hair too soon. Slow that down, buddy.
If I was looking at this, let's say I don't know how this would work, but let's say you're like wearing, like how they made like Avatar. If you're wearing like a suit that has sensors on it, and you're like going to do some yoga thing, like with the K-10, let's say, and the first motion, 18 things come up, I'm probably going to be like, fuck this shit. I'm not.
Yeah. I don't want to learn this.
The first
it's not that important to me.
Like, no. I changed my mind.
Kvothe, I mean, he's extremely motivated. So the idea of learning how to fight from the ADEM would probably be pretty high up on his list because of, his desire is to hunt down the Chandrian and kill them for killing his parents. So I don't have that kind of motivation. But it'd be very hard for me.
He's also got, that thing with him with puzzles and stuff, like anything that's a challenge.
Yeah.
He wants to overcome that. But I mean, just for context, and again, obviously we're not living in that world, but I looked up Metheglin, right? And I was like, nope, never mind.
We were like, hey, we should make that before an episode. And then it was like, hold on, like I got to brew this shit?
You know what I had to see to turn me off? Yeast. And I'm like, nope,
yeah,
not gonna happen.
yeah.
I'm not baking a drink. This is fucking ridiculous.
I thought it was a mixed drink that I could just like pour some shit in
Yes.
and measure, make some measurements. I didn't realize I had to like fucking open a brewery to do this shit.
Yeah, I can do a cocktail. I'm not fermenting things. This is not happening, man.
No.
I'm making fucking kombucha and shit.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah, that ended it for me as well. But we do see like that the ADEM are very, very anal in that respect too. Cause like think of how difficult it would be to learn from Tempe too when he's correcting your mistakes. Like just think of when he was teaching him the language and he was like and he's like, no, it's not the, it's the.
No,
and he's like, no, the the. It's like, dude, I'm saying what you're saying.
Yeah, well, like you're saying, anal is an understatement, and the crazy thing is they don't even look at it like that. Like you say, pedantic. In our world, it's like, all right, yeah, let's just ease up. But in their world, there's no easing up. It's
this is the right way, and everything else is wrong.
Well, like in a good example also is with the sword, right? They have to memorize this fucking whole history before you're walking out of this room.
Yeah, and you need a justification for why these guys are that good at fighting. Like it would have to be that they have this special training or either it's got to be either a special ability or a special training that just doesn't exist anywhere else. Because otherwise, why the fuck would they be so superior? Being such little and tiny, like, Mayweather is very fast, and he would be very difficult for like a heavyweight to hit. Like they would struggle to get him, but eventually they're gonna put him in a fucking corner and knock his ass out. And Tempe is sitting there just walloping guys that are way bigger than him, just beating the shit out of him. And like Daydan can fight. Daydan, like he's getting up on his toes, throwing good punches and stuff. And it's not like Tempe is putting him in a chokehold or something like that, where he gets him, on some grappling where the guy's just not familiar with wrestling, and so he gets him on that. He's just like standing there slapping him in the face, and Daydan can't do shit to him. It's like, man, eventually Daydan, in a world, if Tempe is not able to kind of like get him in a kind of hold or something like that, where he debilitates him in that way, just standing toe to toe with a guy that much bigger than you, I mean, he's eventually going to connect on you and going to drop your ass.
Well, they give great examples too, because the people that he fights are not just, run-of-the-mill people. They know how
professional
to fight.
Soldiers, professional, fighters. So,
and they use tactics that are sound, right? And like Daydan, that's an interesting example because he does something that you wouldn't expect, and the way that it happens, it's like, oh, this guy's actually, he
started throwing combo pieces at him and shit. Yeah. So he's not just, it's like throwing, triple jabs and following with a hook, and like he's throwing combinations. And so it's like, if you're just whooping the shit out of guys like that, and you could take 3 or 4 of those guys on all at the same time, you can fight them all at once, and you're confident you're going to stomp them. You either got to have some super special training or some super special abilities, because that's just not how shit works.
Yeah, it's either going to be superpowers, right? They're capable of magic, or it's this ridiculous training.
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's ridiculous training.
Maybe it could be both. I mean, obviously the training is extensive and ridiculous, but it could also be that there's something different about the ADEM that they spawn from, because it's likely that the ADEM come from the Ruach, and so there's probably because of the fact that they they're not mixing and the ADEM aren't going out and having families with the barbarians. It's a very insular society where so the ADEM are having children with other ADEM, or they have their special system where the moms just become pregnant because for no apparent reason, but whatever, they're not getting the genes from other people, so it's a very one group society and it could be just that they come from a line of Ruach that was very powerful, and they haven't diluted their bloodlines, and so that they're more powerful than regular people, and they got better abilities. So it could just be better training. They had better methods. Maybe that's part of being the Ruach too. The Ruach, they were able to learn things and figure things out over thousands of years at a higher level. But it could be bloodlines, special learning, special abilities. Could be a combination. It likely is.
They're all hammerheads, right?
Hammerheads?
Yeah.
I don't know what that. I don't know.
You remember the Ruach getting hit with hammers in the head?
Oh yeah.
And
no, that wasn't the Ruach that got hammered in the head. That was the people that followed. Those humans got hammered in the face by Telu. Telu hammered just regular humans. That was an angel thing. Angels apparently get a kick out of slamming humans in the face with a hammer.
And the hammerheads.
Yeah.
That's how they make hammerheads. Evolution, bro. Evolution.
Yeah. And then also, Kvothe began to teach Tempe the striptease, and they were hoping that they would make it to Crossing by noon of the next day, but near mid-morning they encountered a stretch of dreary, reeking swamp that hadn't been marked on the map. Says, I loved it. At one point, Dedan startled and fell, thrashing about and splattering the rest of us with brackish water. Fucking classic. And then he said he'd seen a mosquito bigger than his thumb with a sucker like a woman's hairpin. He suggested it might have been a sipquake. He suggested several unpleasant, unsanitary things I could do to myself at my earliest convenience.
Dude, again, he sucks, man. Like picture being in that group. Dude falls in a fucking swamp, and so he has to splash it all over you. Like, get the fuck out of here, man! Just get your shit together.
Part of me would find it funny, just because like he's like spazzing out in the water. Even if I got messy, he'd be like, you dick. But still, I would still be laughing at him because he is that guy that this big burly ass fucking dude, and then when he falls in the water, it's like freaking out, splashing water everywhere. Like, dude, settle down, you spaz.
I went fucking kayaking up in these springs, and this one dude was on like one of those standing boards, and he kept falling in. They all kept laughing at him. I was laughing at him, and they were like, "Oh, look, they're even laughing at you." And I was like, "It's not you falling; it's you screaming at the last moment." Is why I'm laughing, because every time he's like, yeah, like right at the last, because he kept thinking he's gonna save it, and then right at the last moment he'd scream like this shrill of a scream. It's like, dude, it's water, man, and you've fallen in 3 times. Like, what's so scary about it at this point?
Oh man, and then they go, and also there's mention that the moon was full, giving us more than enough light to pick our way through the trees. Despite the miserable day, our spirits began to rise. So that's important because he goes into the Fae on a full moon. And obviously that's going to get brought up again by Felurian. But full moons, getting into the Fae is extremely important. And I think that's going to play into the Lackless poem about a time that must be right. And so I think the references to the moon and those kind of things, I think it's likely to get into the Doors of Stone. You probably got to do it during a full moon.
Yeah, I mean that sounds right.
Yeah,
I mean it makes sense. I mean with everything we've seen, plus with the coin and all that stuff. I mean it's talked about quite a bit.
And then we also get Hespa and Dedan coming together. Hespa had grown tired enough to lean on Dedan, and as the mud-covered mercenary put an arm around her, she's told him he hadn't smelled this good in months. He replied that he would have to bow to the judgment of a woman of such obvious grace. I tensed, waiting for the banner to turn sour and sarcastic, but as I plodded along behind them, I noticed how gently he had his arm around her. Hespa leaned on him almost tenderly, hardly favoring her wounded leg at all. I glanced at Martin, and the old tracker smiled, his teeth white in the moonlight. So, you get in that beginning of their relationship, which obviously comes into fruition after he leaves the Fae. And he also, smartly, he puts his arm around her. He doesn't wait for, her to be like, hey, you could put your arm around me. And, the moment passed and I missed my chance.
Or he could
Never gonna shoot again.
Or when she says it, he could come back with, "Oh, you're what is it?
Cease your sweet
Yeah,
words."
yeah. Some stupid fucking poetry that is extraordinarily awkward and terrible.
Yeah, Daydan's an actual. He's a man, not and that's part of it too. Is Kvothe's still
Kvothe's a kid. Yeah.
Daydan's a man, and so
But still,
he reacts
we still
like
want
a
to make
man.
fun of him.
Yeah, for
Still
sure. That's how you become a man. Is you start off as a boy and you get made fun of until you become a man, because you get tired of making the same mistakes that everybody keeps making fun of you for. That's why you need friends that make fun of you, because if you don't have those friends, how do you know when you're doing something that is going to get you mocked behind your back? If you don't have friends that will mock you to your face, then you're only getting mocked behind your back, and that's not a good thing. You need self-correcting behavior.
That is correct. I 100% agree. It's not fun when it's happening when you're a kid. It sucks. It's not fun, but
it also gives you a thicker skin. You gotta be able to laugh at yourself. You can't laugh at yourself. You take yourself so seriously. Then you get butthurt and listen to a podcast and then give, a 1-star review because they say words you don't like. Oh, man.
So you talked about trolls earlier. So just for Rothfuss to really deliver as a monumental troll, make book 3 the Hespe and Daydan love story.
Yeah.
And that's
like 20 chapters on it. Like them just like Kvothe goes and like lives with them and stays in their house, and it's just like Hespe and Daydan being like obnoxiously romantic with each other.
Oh man, that'd be really funny. And then everybody's complaining. It's like, dude, it's in there.
Yeah,
you saw it on chapter 94. He put his arm around her.
Yeah,
we were leading to this.
They got together, and now we get the full circle of this. I mean, obviously, we needed to finish up their love story. That was one of the key parts of the book. And
everybody's just, what about Puppet? Like, forget about Puppet. It's about it's about Hespe and Daydan. That's who it's about.
Hespe and Daydan knocking boots. That's what everybody wanted. That's what I'm giving you.
Knocking boots.
But yeah, and then we get the end, which is a phenomenal piece of writing. There was no singing any longer, nor did we see a road, inn, or a flicker of firelight. Just a wide clearing, well lit by moonlight. The stream broadened out, forming a bright pool, and sitting on a smooth rock by the side of the pool, "Lord Telu, protect me from the demons of the night," Martin said woodenly. But he sounded more reverent than afraid, and he did not look away. "That's," Daydan said weakly, "that's, I do not believe in fairies," I tried to say, but it came out as barely a whisper. It was Felurian. I love that part. That's, I do not believe in fairies, I tried to say, but it came out as barely a whisper. It was Felurian. It's a great way to introduce her to the story.
Yeah. And it's, for the longest time, I've talked to you about this so many times, but the longest time, I just kept picturing this pool, this bright pool in the clearing. And now I finally like realize why, because I'm like reading it again, and it's like it's talked about here. It's just the beginning. That's what it is. But I pictured it as if they were there the entire experience or something. But yeah, it's just the beginning, and it really sticks in my mind. Like really, it's great imagery. The imagery that he utilizes in these.
Oh yeah, because you would always talk about the fact that the pool was reflective, and yeah, there's one line of that. That's crazy. It's literally one line in the book, and you were like, that was like your focus on the entire time in the Fae, and that wasn't even in the Fae.
So
just in the woods.
So, but yes, true. But however, you say it's one line in the book. The second line of the next chapter, the slow rippling of the pool reflected onto the fair form of Felurian. So, and there's more. It goes on and on about the reflecting pool, and so don't fucking tell me it's one line in the book. But yes, it's not actually in the Fae. It's like that little entrance. But yeah, it's stuck in my mind forever. It's why I kept picturing it.
So you'd be, while the old men are going and getting with Felurian, you'd be mesmerized by the fucking pond. Just like, hey, we're in the Fae, guys. Look at the water. I can see my face.
Yeah.
Just the Fae is so trippy. It's like, dude, I don't think we're in the Fae. I think this is just the woods. No, man. Look at the pool. The pool.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of it actually, this would be the spot that just ends up being a whole bunch of old guys lined up around the pool with their old feet.
They're all because they all got these terminal illnesses, so they're all freaking smoking joints, getting high as shit, just looking in that reflective pool. Like, dude, the Fae is so trippy.
And they're not actually in the Fae. They're just like you're just in the woods.
Just chilling in the woods, getting eaten up by mosquitoes. Look, man, I got all these like Felurian kiss marks on my body. Those are mosquito bites. What are you talking about? That's poison ivy. You just have a rash. That is not a hickey. Why would you have a hickey on the back of your knee? It doesn't even make sense, man.
Well, let them have their fun, you know?
But yeah, say. That's all I got on 94.
Yes.
All right, so chapter 95 is Chased, and in this chapter, they see Felurian, and Kvothe chases after her.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Right, a little bit of a race. They race.
Yep, and Felurian wins. So Kvothe is extremely slow. He's not a good runner. He runs like a little kid.
The way he described
sounds skippy, and he's not getting his knees up high enough. His elbows are swinging out. Like, this kid's running like an idiot.
Well, I guess I don't know. It is her terrain, so she knows the area. Maybe there's some advantage there.
Yeah, but he was running carefree. He wasn't even worried about the terrain.
Yeah, I don't know. But he does eventually catch her. So it sounds like she allowed herself to be caught.
Yeah, as well. Yeah. She could have dusted him. She's basically like the Usain Bolt of the Fae.
So there is a line within her little song that she sings where she mentions my favorite character, Losi. Losi made it into the song. Thought that was worth mentioning.
Yeah. It was, Ceylanian, Luiel, di Mari, Faluna, Kreta, Tu, Ciara, Tu, Alarin, di Durella, Mauen. Heard of Mauen a lot. Losi and Delin, Tunia Vor Rulin, Felurian Thay. Rulin, maybe the Rulin is the Ru.
Maybe.
But I don't know what I don't know what these words are. Even like a Mauen, like I've heard it in so many contexts, it sounds like a curse word similar to the F-bombs that we use as commas. That they are, it's a curse word with a very varied use, because I've heard it used in many different contexts, and it seems like every time it's been mentioned, it's been in the context seems different.
Well, that would make it like an F-bomb.
Yeah, it seems to be a very flexible curse word.
That would also suggest it's probably quite ancient, especially given the fact that it's being spoken by Felurian. And you mentioned all these different contexts and cultures.
Well, it's said by the Fae. I mean, it's Bast says it as well. I don't know if I haven't heard any humans say it. It's a Fae word.
Oh, the way you said it, I thought you were saying that you've heard it in
many contexts. Like, yeah, I have Bast and Felurian both say it, and the way they use it, it's used differently in different contexts. So I don't know. It's a Fae word for sure, but I don't know. It sounds like a curse word, but it seems like it has multiple uses. But yeah, and then we get, the sound of her voice was strange. It was soft and gentle, far too quiet for us to hear across the entire length of the clearing, far too faint for us to hear over the sound of moving water and stirring leaves. Despite this, I could hear it. So it's obviously, it's like a siren song is how she pulls people in, it seems, because the closer he got to her, the stronger the pull of her music was. So she's very much like the sirens of, Greek mythology and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that. That was one of the things that is pretty great. I've always liked that similarity between Felurian, like Homer's sirens. It's also, I mean, it seems like even from a district, from a fair distance, and then we get like hints of like a Loden's type capability with like her voice and how she's basically whispering. Like he shouldn't be able to hear her, but he can hear very clear.
Yeah, and he said it. What she was saying, it reminded me of something I could not press my finger to. Curious what that is, like what it is about what she was saying that he heard and he didn't understand a word of it, but it reminded him of something and he couldn't press his finger to it. And so is it just the voice? Has he heard Fae, words being spoken before when he was a child or something along those lines? And it could lend credence towards some of the people who don't think Arleden is Kvothe's dad, that Kvothe's dad is a Fae creature. Could lend some credence towards that maybe he's heard this language being spoken before, something along those lines. But I tend to believe Arleden is going to be his dad, and I don't think that's going to be. I don't think that's going to be turned around in book 3. But if you were going to look at that if you were going down that path, if you believe that, that's something you could point to as being a possibility of strengthening that argument, that he seems to have heard this language before. But
part of me, the way that kind of hit my ear was because of so much of what she does like creates a feeling. It almost felt like that was another part of the feeling, which is probably too much, but just the idea of like it's nurturing or like homely, or I don't know, gives that feeling of something like you're safe and secure or something, which you should feel the opposite, but it like lures you in,
Yeah, it's
it
the
does
fact that he's
suggest, like,
like,
it
I couldn't
reminds him
press
of
my
something.
finger to it, like it was like it's on the tip of my tongue type of thing.
Yeah.
Like that makes me think it's a memory. And so,
Yeah.
and maybe it's his mom's a lackless. Maybe she, had been to the Fae or something along those things. But it seems like her dad and his mom seem like they don't believe in the Fae. They seem to think it was like superstitious nonsense. And they to the fact that they both kind of were like going to Abinthy like, man, I thought we thought you were an educated man. We didn't think you'd believe this nonsense. And so if they had seen the Fae, or she, gave birth to a Fae creature's child, it seems like she didn't know that she was giving birth to a Fae creature, because she seems to dismiss all that stuff as myth. So if it's true, it seems like he tricked her.
You say he would be the individual that
the Fae individual, the male Fae that impregnated her. Like, I don't know who that would be, but it seems to be the case that he would have had to have tricked her because of the fact that, we've already seen her demonstrate a non-belief in this type of shit. So I'm curious. I'm just real curious why this is something that's on the tip of his tongue, where he would have heard it before. What's the context? I'm really fucking curious about what that is. If that's just because that stands out so much that there's got to be something more there that we're gonna find out in book 3.
Maybe it's the melody. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it could be, but then, I mean, he follows it up where it doesn't seem like that's the case, because then he was like, the tune was the same Dedan had sung in his story. Because if it was that, he would have said, then it hit me, the tune was the same Dedan had, sung in his story. But he doesn't say that. He just says, he says something about it that reminds me of it. It reminds, that I can't recall, but I have some kind of memory of this. But then he's like, and then also in addition to that, the tune was the same Dedan had sung in his story. Did not understand a word of it, save for her name in the final line. Nevertheless, I felt the draw of it, inexplicable and insistent. So there's obviously, it's magic. And then he said, he's able to resist it. And then he heard Martin murmuring, no, 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 in a low voice, as if he were trying to convince himself, no, 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 not for all the money in the world. But I love this week Martin is having. Like,
yeah,
man,
I know.
he is seeing some messed up shit. Like, what did I do? Like, I saw, Kvothe using a voodoo doll. I saw this dude that seems impervious to pain. There's a giant beast of a man that's ripping arrows out of his leg and scaring the shit out of me and just disappears into thin air. And now, after that, I run into Felurian. Like, what did I do wrong? Why me?
I was gonna say, I mean, that's a good reason because my basic note was like, man, he really believes in the scary stories. Like, there's like Martin is the type of guy that is not playing with a Ouija board.
No,
that's not his thing. He's not standing in front of the mirror. What did people used to do? They'd stand in front of a mirror and say some shit.
Like Bloody Mary, something like that.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. I couldn't even remember. I never did it. I always thought it was stupid. But
I don't believe that there's monsters under my bed. But if I walk into my room tonight and a monster crawled out of my bed, underneath my bed and stood up and was standing in front of me and started like singing a song, I'd be like, fucking monsters under your bed are fucking real. They exist. I see it with my own two eyes. So even if I didn't believe in Felurian beforehand, if she's just pops up and shows up and she's there, and there's clearly something magical going on, and Felurian doesn't look like a human woman. I mean, she looks like a woman, but like she's different, much different, like the descriptions of her.
And clearly all three of them, there's no doubt in their mind. They're like, wait, they know the second they see her, like, oh shit, that's who we've heard of. This is this legend.
Yeah, they can feel the pull too, and they're not oblivious to it. She says Felurian, singing a weird language, seems, they can tell. So yeah, that would be messed up. But then, so they step, Tempe, he stood, surprised plain on his normally impassive face. Dan stood rigidly to one side, his face drawn, while Hespa's eyes darted back and forth between him and the clearing. It's a hilarious little aspect of the story. It's like, hold on. I've been working on this dude for years. You do not get to step in and fucking swoop him up. Like, I just got him to put his arm around me. This has been a massive work in progress. You gonna fucking kind of swoop in and take him? No, I'm not having any of that.
Yeah, that's fucking great.
Yeah.
She knocks his ass out.
Yeah. Felurian sang, and I felt the pull of it. It was strong, but not strong enough that I couldn't hold myself back. And, and obviously once he gets closer, it pulls him in even more. And then he's like, a sudden clarity of thought came over me. What was I afraid of? A fairy story? There was magic here, real magic. What's more, it was a magic of singing. If I missed this opportunity, I would never forgive myself. It's like, dude, you got some fucking big old balls. You got them. That's why the mayor put you in charge of this group. You have those big ass hairy balls. Well, that's the kind of guy you want in a leadership position.
What's really cool is like, so far, since he's seen her, he's twice like depraved, like held himself back. He's like, I can feel it pulling me, but I'm holding myself back. So like twice he's resisting, right?
Yeah.
But you did skip over. There was another mention. I did want to mention it. Then Felurian began to sing again. It felt like the promise of a warm hearth on a cold night. It was like a young girl's smile. I found myself thinking of Losi at the Pennyworth. Her red curls like a tumble of fire. I remembered the swell of her breast and the way her hand had felt running through my hair. See, I'm telling you, man, Losi's the hero of this story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all going to be about Losi now. Dan and Hespa and Losi shows up.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and they hang out and, they're having a good old time, having a good life, and then Kvothe opens the wrong door, unleashes hell, and then has to go hide out in the bar. That's your story.
Yeah, that's where it is. It is. I do remember first reading like that part you just read. There was magic here, real magic, magic of singing, which is worth talking about. But if I miss this opportunity, I'd never forgive myself. Where it's just like, whoa, wait, well, huh? So like this is what he's doing, huh? And it just goes from there, right?
Yeah.
But, that magic of singing, which he just straight up mentions it there, and then we get more and more about it, which talked about that before with Kvothe, that there's magic in singing. Obviously, she's the Fae, so she's working on a different level, right? Like it seems like there's a
Mm.
different sort of thing going on here. It seems effortless as well, what she's able to project.
Yeah, and hers doesn't even. I don't even necessarily think it's what she's doing is. I don't think it's a singing magic because she just radiates that,
Hmm.
and like even when she's not talking or even awake, when she's asleep, she is pulling him in, and he desires to be with her and that kind of shit. So it seems to be just a power that she has that's innate within her.
Yeah, yeah, and well, and I guess in this context, it's being delivered through song, right? Or it's being emphasized because she's singing in the moment.
Yeah.
It's
But there,
quite
I mean,
important also.
there's also though there's the fact that you can hear the music even though you can't hear it. So is that part of just that radiating prowess that she has that just kind of radiates off her, and that makes that even makes the music you can hear more, or is it actually magic music where when she sings that it carries further than a normal person's voice would carry, or is it just her voice, she could make her voice carry like that
Mm,
without kind of singing. It's like a naming type, a loading type of thing, like
mm,
clearly, but there's many different facets of what the hell might be going on here, whether it's just this radiating power of her, is it like a naming power, a speaking power, singing power. But regardless, there's magical shit going on with her. It's not just that she's attractive, obviously.
yeah, well, and with her magic, one of the important things that does happen is when she really forces it on. Like when she really like, because there's when they kind of they have like a little fight. She presses it hard,
Yeah.
right? So there are levels to it. It's not just all effortless. It comes out of her in an
Yeah,
effortless
she
way,
can
but
bear down on you with it.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, and then so he looks back at them, and they're Tempe's backing away. Dan's hands made fists at his side, and then was I going to be like them, superstitious and afraid? No, never. I was of the Arcanum. I was a namer. I was one of the Deemeru. I love that aspect. That
Yeah.
it's like
It's
the
a little pep
Arcanum.
talk.
I'm a namer.
That's
Not,
great.
but most importantly, I was one of the Deemeru. I felt wild laughter boil up in me. I will meet you at the Pennyworth in 3 days' time, I said, and stepped into the clearing. Which is, there's got to be something to that as well, because he does meet them
Hmm.
in the Pennyworth in 3 days' time, even though it seems like he spends like a year, maybe more, in the Fae. Only 3 days go past. Is that something you control? Like, can you go in and you can control it by what you desire to happen? Like, I want to only be gone for 3 days, and then when you come out, it's only going to be 3 days later, or is it just he got lucky, or is it part of his naming ability? He knew it. He's a namer. He's a knower,
Hmm.
and so he knew he was only going to be gone 3 days, not consciously, but his sleeping mind, his subconscious knew he was only going to be gone for 3 days. Curious what that is as well. I doubt we'll
I
find out, but I'm curious what that is.
well, I will say he's not super measured here, right? He is just going by the seat of his pants, which is always a good thing for him, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he says it's like it's a matter of fact, right? There's that. There's also it's always three. It's always threes, man. Like
Mm,
they. I didn't even think about it, but when they decided they would just stay at the camp 3 days, it's everywhere. And then
yeah.
also thought 3 days, like he's gonna go hang out with this Felurian. He's gonna hang out with this chick 3 days. 3 days, good time. Not too much to like
Yeah.
get sick of each other, but just enough to get through.
I don't, man. I'm pretty sure I could go. I could go a lot more longer than like 3 days with like the hottest girl on the planet. Like before I got tired of it, where I was like, this is mundane, everyday stuff. Like, nah, I'm usually good for more than 3 days before
I
the
mean,
infatuation falls away, and then she's just another one. Just some annoying person that does annoying stuff that you're in a relationship with.
Laying around and
keeps parking behind you, and keeps putting the seat down when you like to leave it up.
Those are the things. Those are the big things. Parking behind is more of a problem, I would say.
Watching TV shows that you don't like a big jerk.
Why would you? I love picturing like walk in the room. It's a show you don't like, and you just. Why would you do this to me?
Why would you do this to me?
Why do you do this to me?
That's it. Go to the bar. Don't wait up for me. Hey guys, my girl, she's always getting on my nerves, just always watching shows, and I don't like those shows, and she keeps watching them. Like, I don't know, man. It sounds like you got some fucking issues you need to work through. It doesn't sound so bad. Can't you just go in another room?
You don't understand.
That's my TV. That's the TV I like to watch.
That's the one I want right then and there.
Yeah.
And it's not just that. I know what's going on in there. That bothers me.
Yeah. Those stupid shows are filling her head full of dumb thoughts, and she tells me about them. I don't like it. She's coming up with the most mundane things to be furious about.
I do also like that Dedan. He does what you would expect. Where you're like, well, if he's going, then I'm going. But yeah, that doesn't really work out for him, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. Sod off. If he's going, then up. Fucking hits the ground. And he looks back, and Tempe's just watching it, like he's the judge scoring the fight. And Hespa's sitting there slamming his arm behind his back, ends up breaking his arm or dislocating his arm or something. And yeah, and then Martin is just
she got her knee on the small position. It's just like she's arresting him, man.
Yeah. She pinned him to the ground, twisting his arm behind his back. And she's a tough girl. She's a tough girl. And his Dedan's a big dude, and he just got manhandled by her. And then Martin, kid, get back here. Kid, come back. Kvothe, man, he's got some big old balls. So he goes after her. And also, too, when he got closer, he mentioned, that he felt the pull most strongly now, and her skin was bright in the moonlight. Keeps reiterating the moonlight, because obviously, that is an important aspect of getting into the Fae, is the moonlight. So he makes a point to mention that a few times. And then, he says, I could see her eyes, dark and curious, her mouth spread into a wide, dangerous smile. She laughed a wild laugh. It was bright and delighted. It was no human sound. That, it comes back, obviously, when he gets out of the Fae and he's at the Pennyworth Inn. When he laughs, he mentions that it was no human sound. And so that's part of the reason I think that the Fae changes you. That if Kvothe stayed in the Fae, it would change him physically, and it would change who he is. I think that is part of the aspect of the Fae and why they're different. Is that the Fae is so fundamentally different that it changes you. That it's not just a place you could just go and visit for years and years and years and come out and be the same person.
It does also seem like, say Bast, for example, can leave the Fae, and because he's from the Fae, he still maintains, let's say if you're a Fae creature, right? So if Kvothe goes to the Fae, he can take on Fae qualities, right? And become maybe even partially a Fae creature, but he's not Bast. He's not Felurian, in that he's not he's not made in the Fae. And it seems like in that sense, if you're made in the Fae, maybe you're immortal because, Felurian's been around thousands of years, but also you can leave and still maintain those abilities. At least it seems, right? That's what Bass is doing. And I thought of Bass the no human sound, because when he hisses, and a couple of those times when he gets hit with iron and shit like that, yeah, he goes animal.
Yeah. Yeah, Yeah, I don't know exactly what the differences would be, where if you're naturally born in the Fae. Obviously, if the Fae fundamentally changes you, it's going to have a greater impact if you've lived your whole life in the Fae. You were born there and you lived your whole life there. And obviously, if you're talking about you're the byproduct of Felurian, who's comes all the way back to the Ruach era before the Fae existed. If you're being born, that's your lineage is those kind of people that are immortals, then yeah, you're likely, gonna have a longer lifespan or maybe an immortal lifespan as well. Like, so it's a much different environment though. It's not remotely like the human world. Like when he's there, it's not anything, there's very, very little similarities between what we see in the Fae versus what we would see in the human world.
Yeah, I find it challenging to picture.
Yeah.
There's we don't get like a structure. We get images. We get like feelings, and which
Have you ever seen Labyrinth?
I don't think so.
With David Bowie and like this little girl, she's like babysitting, and the kid gets taken by David Bowie into like this alternate reality, and there's like it's like kind of like puppets and puppeteers type of show. Well, it's a extremely well known show from the 80s, but it is it's got that kind of weirdness to it that that Jim Henson puppet shows, like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, or what's that movie with Tom Cruise where when he's like a young kid, The Legend or something like that. It's all these 80s shows. Like, I mean, you haven't seen anything from like any of these classic like fantasy shows.
I don't do a lot of fantasy. Yeah.
These were classic shits for like to watch as a kid. Your parents were doing you a disservice. You should after this, you should call them up, even if they're asleep, and yell at them.
Wow.
For not having you watch these as a kid. You missed out. But for like people who've seen it, it's like this. Is it ephemeral? Is that the right word?
I was going to say
like there's kind of glossy haze world.
Yeah, I was going to say ethereal. Maybe
yeah.
But I get that. Yeah, I get that feeling because, like, well, in particular, he wakes up and can see the trees, and then he's like laying on silk pillows. Like, well, how's that work?
And he doesn't know where how the food got delivered, and all those kind of things, aspects of it. It's just a weird, different world.
Yeah, for example, when I'm camping, I wake up and I see trees. There's no pillows. I don't have, there's no
unless you put
pillows.
them there and you went and got them, and where the pillows came from.
Yeah.
You know where the food came from. You don't just like wake up and just there's food, and I'm just.
You also don't. I'm also not Ubering, Uber Eats to the middle of the woods.
Yeah,
getting food delivered, but also like just the impracticality of like a bunch of silk drapery in the woods. It's like,
or you look off in one horizon and it's summer, and the other it's winter, and then one is daylight and one's night. Like it's so fundamentally different. It's just bizarre.
And he mentions like he had the feeling that it was getting late, but it'd been twilight since he woke up.
Yeah,
and it never changed because they did. I guess because they stayed in the same place. Yeah, so it's very, very different. Very different for sure. But yeah, that was kind of the word that I would use was ethereal. Kind of jumps out and and then he does a great job of suggestive.
Yeah. And then he goes and he leaps to the chase after her. And despite the weight of my travel sack and the sword at my hip, I moved so quickly, my cloak flared like a flag behind me. Never have I run like that before, and never since. It was the way a child runs, light and quick, without the least fear of falling. One thing that I do, I respect about Felurian, and then I think, she does him a disservice, is clearly he went into the Fae with his cloak, and then it's gone. Like, she got rid of that cloak, clearly. She tossed that shit away. She burned that as soon as he got in there with it. She saw him running and it billowing, And she looked at him, and he's probably like with his hands, he's making it billow himself, like holding it out into the wind, and like, whoa, look at me, Felurian. And he's really nerding it up. She's like, nah, that cloak is done. But she could have solved the cloak problem and just not given him a new one, or like told him that real heroes don't wear cloaks, and to grow up and stop being this weirdo that runs around with cloaks. She was his first person he had sex with. She could have got him to stop wearing cloaks if she wanted, but she gives him a cloak. At least though, on the flip side, that cloak is somewhat cool.
Yeah, it's magic.
Yeah, it's a magic cloak. Of course, he could be making that up too. That could be the fake narrative shit. Like, oh, I got a magic cloak.
Yeah, this new one. Oh man, this one's so badass.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so great.
The worst. But Felurian ahead of me into the scrub. I dimly remember trees, the smell of earth, the gray of moonlit stone. So again, the moonlit, the gray of moonlit stone. So probably a gray stone, gray of moonlit stone. It's obviously important. And then she laughs, she dodges, dances, pulls ahead. She waits till I am almost close enough to touch, then skips away. And I love the end of the description here where, it comes off where he's like, and I have a hold of her. Her hands are tangled in my hair, pulling me close, her mouth eager, her tongue shy and darting, her breath in my mouth, filling my head. The hot tips of her breasts brush my chest. The smell of her, like clover, like musk, like ripe apples, falling to the ground. And there's no hesitation, no doubt. I know exactly what to do. My hands are on the back of her neck, brushing her face, tangled in her hair, sliding along the smooth length of her thigh, grabbing her hard by the flank, circling her narrow waist, lifting her, laying her down. And she is astride me, her movements wild, her long hair trails across my skin. She tosses her head, trembling and shaking, crying out in a language I do not know. Her sharp nails digging into the flat muscles of my chest, and there's music to it. The wordless cries she makes, rising and falling, her sigh, my racing heart, her motion slow. I clutch her hips in frantic counterpoint. Our rhythm is like a silent song, like sudden thunder, like the half-heard thrumming of a distant drum. And everything stops. All of me arches. I am taut as a lute string, trembling, aching. I am tuned too tight. I am breaking. That's some fucking dope-ass writing.
Yes.
And that is not like, oh, and then Kvothe, he goes into the Fae, and then he just starts banging.
Well, I will say that's one hell of a first kiss for young Kvothe. But yeah, it seems to me, it's not exactly that. It's not a situation where Felurian's just running the show. It's the moment itself is like entwining the two of them, and it's something that's just happening very naturally. But I can see, it's funny when I bet the line itself. I bet one of the lines that bothers people is, "I know exactly what to do." I bet that bothers people.
Yeah. Well, I did too. Once it was, once you're in there like swimwear, like you know what to do.
Well, yeah, no, that is actually fucking true.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you went, yeah, it's like
actually, now what?
That's a great point.
Thrust forward, now pull back, now thrust forward. Like what next though? Is how many times?
That's actually, dude, that's such a great point because I hadn't thought about that in so fucking long. But I do recall, I've seen television shows where kids, they get all fucking worked up about like kissing a girl and shit, and they're like, "Well, I gotta practice." It's like, what? How you do it? That's how you practice. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah,
like there's no practicing. I'm gonna kiss So I remember seeing something about like kissing a doll or kissing a hand or some shit. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Dude,
how is that
I figured that shit out from day one. Lots of tongue all around the outside of the mouth. Golden. That's all you do. Just remember that. I brought that up before. Just don't forget that. You got that down. You're good. You're golden. Every girl loves that. Lick all over the outside of the mouth.
Yeah. No, but yeah, that is pretty fucking funny though. Like that's a funny thing. I hadn't thought about that aspect of it. I can get where other people, they're just bothered by the idea of something extraordinary happening to an
But
individual.
it's written in such it's written in such a beautiful way where it's like it's a piece of art the way he writes that. Like that is
Mhm.
not some tawdry freaking Playboy, some penthouse forum shit. And that's the way
Mhm.
everybody talks about it. Like not everybody. That's the way people who talk about it derogatorily and they are like, oh, the second book's all about him having sex. It's like they talk about it like it's described in this graphic base way, and it's not like that at all. He writes like
No.
fucking it's like reading, a piece of poetry is what it's like reading
Mhm.
a poetry about, having sex for the first time. It's not it's like what are you talking about, man? This is some and like his time in the Fae, that is like the mastery of the skill of writing, just the craft of writing, man. He is like
Mhm.
fucking shooting 40-foot jumpers and just draining them like curry, man. You're watching something special when you're watching that.
Well, I agree with that, and it is kind of it's elevating being able to write about an intimate experience that is both physical and has other has other aspects involved as well, and he's able to actually do that with balance, and that's like you said, it's not tawdry,
No.
and that's really funny too because I've never really understood the critiques when it comes out, and when you when you describe it as if it is written that way, then that critique would actually make some sense.
Yeah.
It's also a very small part of the book. It's
Yeah.
a great part of the book, in my opinion, but to act as if it's the entire book is a freaking sex romp is beyond ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's nuts. But yeah, and then we go into chapter 96, the fire itself, and in this chapter, Kvothe feels the pull of Felurian, and he begins to, try to get the heck out of there.
Not just the pull, but the pull with like the risk, and actually I like how he utilizes it as fuel to fuel what he needs to get out. That
Yeah.
he realizes, oh shit, this is what's happening to me. And instead of just going and getting pulled in and then being the victim, he rallies like a son of a bitch and uses everything inside of him to then stoke that fire. And dude, I forgot where he goes with it to really go to that next level. Wow, it's pretty uncanny.
Yeah, and he starts off where you get the fact that she's making him lose his mind. He really builds that in where he's like, she looks smooth and perfect as a sculpture. She sighed in her sleep, and I chided myself for the thought. I knew she was nothing like cold stone. She was warm and supple, the smoothest marble grindstone by comparison. Like right off the bat, you're like, you know, that thought process. You're like, I chided myself. Like you can tell
Yeah.
something's different. And then he's like, my hand reached out to touch her, but I stopped myself, not wanting to disturb the perfect scene before me. And a distant thought began to nag at me, but I brushed it away like an irritating fly. So, and then he looks at her eyes and he says that as her eyes moved gently in sleep, the pattern shifted as if a butterfly fanned its wings. That sight alone was probably worth the price all men must pay for seeing it. I don't know how you could recreate that little, like just that little description about her eyes and her eyelashes and that kind of aspect where he writes it in a way like a butterfly fanned its wings. I don't know how you could do that and make it where like this is the most attractive woman to ever exist. It would be like, what the fuck's up with her butterfly wing fucking eyelashes? Like those are super distracting. Like that is not something that would be like pull you in. You're like, oh, that's hot. Wish
I think
her eyelashes were fucking the size of a butterfly's wings flapping around.
I think it actually this time around. I don't remember the first time reading it if Hunger Games had come out, but I don't know if you remember. It was either the first or the second Hunger Games where where they go to like the Capitol
Yeah.
and they're like trying to get the fans and all that shit. One of them, damn, now I'm forgetting the actress's name. She's fucking great. Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
She has like that's like her eye. They did like fucking butterfly type
Yeah.
thing for her. Whatever. I don't know. Made me think of that, but It is a little bit. I guess the pattern itself, but it makes her sound like. Well, like you said, I mean, I guess she's
And
not
it's
human
something that
technically,
works
but
on paper that I just don't think would work with you actually physically seeing it on an actress. Like,
no,
and she's
yeah,
gonna like black eyes. Like it's gonna be like black eyes, no white, no the eyes are a lot of times what makes someone attractive is their eyes,
yeah.
and the eyelashes are all jacked up and the eyes are black, and it's
Jacked
gonna
up.
be like, what the fuck's up with, like, this is not attractive.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, that's gonna be a hard balance for the visual
Because when we're watching
representation.
it, maybe if they get, I don't know what they can do with the technology. Like you got the 3D where you can make stuff like feel like it's coming at you. Maybe there's something you could do that makes you feel these intense emotions that draw you towards the person, and you like they pump out some magic into the theater.
I don't think we're there with the technology.
You never know when this gets produced. It might be ready.
I would say, yeah, something would need to be. I think texture would be important for like
I
the eyelids.
if I had to bet money, I bet you she has normal eyes in whatever adaptation.
Yes, I would. I
Maybe
would bet so
they
as well.
turn black at moments when she like is attacking or something, but not just normal.
Yeah, it's a
But
visual. I mean, with it being a visual representation, we need it to be sold. She's the most beautiful creature on earth. Yeah, yeah. The eyes especially, it would be too odd and sort
yeah,
of disturbing for that to actually play,
yeah.
in visual form.
But yeah, and then he's like, all the places I've been, all the women I've seen, I've met her equal only once. Is that supposed to be Denna or someone else? You would think almost surely Denna is the way when he tries to describe her, he's at a loss for words. He has no problem describing Felurian, but when he's describing Denna, he can't fucking do it well enough. So you would assume that he's talking about Denna, but I guess it's a possibility that he could be talking about someone he's going to meet in book 3 that's just drop dead gorgeous.
Losi.
He's seen Losi.
Well, I mean, yeah, the natural. I mean, like you said, it could possibly be someone in book 3, but the natural suggestion that we'd come to would be Denna. Yeah. Well, he didn't say
Yeah,
anything about ears. Nothing about ears. Nothing comes out about
nah,
these.
we need
Yeah,
Bass to describe her.
I was gonna.
Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say, how's
then we would
Felurian's
know
ear
how hot
game?
she is. Like, how crooked is her nose, and what are those ears look like, and then we can judge who's hotter.
We do hear though that the arch of her foot screams sex like nothing on earth, or something like that. It was like, wow, the arch of the foot, huh? You big into the feet all of a sudden.
Do you think, because Dennis needs to have a crooked nose, like, do you think that they are going to cast Owen Wilson as Denna, or are they just going to CGI his nose on some girl's
Yeah,
face?
yeah, it has to be his nose.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't think. I mean, I don't think that's gonna make the female lead, who's supposed to be extraordinarily attractive and charming, give her Owen Wilson's nose and
Hey
have
man,
that still be believable.
it's not all about the looks. I think you could CGI his nose on a woman and she would look fine. And
I disagree. I'm
the
going to
book,
disagree with that.
yeah, it has to be representative of the books. You can't deviate from anything, and so Denna
Dude,
has
it's
to have Owen Wilson's nose. That's written into the book.
That is not written into the book. Bass says she had a crooked nose.
I will flip tables. I will scream. I'll throw popcorn at people at the theater if it's a movie. Like, I will go nuts if she does not have Owen Wilson's nose. That is a deal breaker with me. So Rothfuss, don't screw this up. I will not let that go. But yeah, and then
Jeez.
and then
So weird.
then we get, something in my mind screamed at me, but I was bemused by the motions of her eyes beneath her lids, the shape her mouth made, as if she would kiss me even while she slept. I swatted the thought away again, irritated. I was going to go mad or die. So I like that aspect of like there's some part of his mind trying to fight its way to the surface, and he just keeps, because of her magic, just keeps kind of swatting it away and pushing it down. And then finally he snaps to a bit and he realizes, shit, I'm going to die. And then that idea, it's, fought its way to the surface, and he kind of just wakes up and realizes he's in danger. And then he tries to lower himself into Heart of Stone, but it doesn't come. He's not able to do it. And it's the first time since he's learned it that he's not able to put himself in Heart of Stone. I like how he wrote, where he goes, behind my eyes, Felurian distracted me. The sweet breath, the soft breast, the urgent half despairing sighs that slipped through hunger, petal tender lips, stone. And it's like that little part of his mind, like he does a good job of describing like his mind slipping back away. He tried to go into Heart of Stone, his mind starts to slip away, and then as it's slipping, he's like, no, stone. It's like, fucking remember, got to get in the Heart of Stone. Like I like that aspect of how, because he doesn't talk about the fighting back and forth. He demonstrates it with how he writes the scene.
Yeah. The writing's tremendous, and it really puts you in that position. And I mean, we can tell because he's given us the pieces that it's his training. Without his training, this is why everybody else fails when they come here, man.
Yeah.
Like they don't have the ability. Not only does he have the ability, somebody could come that has the ability to, that understands the basics of sympathy, but he can break his mind up into all these different pieces, and thankfully he can, because he's going to have to utilize it.
Yeah, he wouldn't have survived. And then like he starts going into like diagnosing what is happening to himself. And so he starts thinking, what do I know about Felurian? And he's, men die in her embrace. And he's like, how did they die? It was fairly simple to guess. Extreme physical stress. My body flushed, and I struggled deeper into the Heart of Stone until my pulse slowed, and I could force the thought of her from the front. I should have brought that up too. Is the fact he slips himself into the Heart of Stone, and then he starts thinking, cold and calculated on what is actually happening. And so he's talking about the physical stress, and then he's, dips himself even further into it. And I remember 4 stories where men had come back. What manner of madness did they exhibit? Obsessive behavior, accidental death due to separation from reality, and wasting away from extreme melancholy. 3 died within a span of days. The 4th story told of a man lasting nearly half a year. So he starts to break it down, what's happening, and then he realizes, this isn't just looking at her. Like, yeah, she's beautiful and all that, and like, don't get me wrong, she's gorgeous, but she's not like so drop dead gorgeous that you're gonna lose your mind by looking at her. He's like, he realizes there's something magical about her. And then while he's trying to figure this out, he goes, she was watching me. If she was beautiful at rest, she was doubly so awake. Asleep, she was a painting of a fire. Awake, she was the fire itself. Which is a dope line. Like, that wouldn't be like a good one to say. It would come out real cheesy if you said that to a girl, like in live person. But like if like you had like a text message and she read a text message and you will like happen to have described her like that, that'd be a good one to like accidentally have her find.
Oh, I like the accidental text on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
there you go.
Leave your phone out. Like you got a text to your friend of you saying that, like as a description, like you got to see this new girl I'm with.
I like, well, yeah, his struggle, his back and forth is like depriving himself and choosing to, protect himself. Well, I mean, nothing else. It's very mature on his part, right? Because I mean, most people that are coming into this, they're just going off the emotion. Now he's also depriving himself of what would probably be a very, pleasurable occasion, pleasurable experience
For a moment, until it kills you.
Yeah, yeah. But I do like, especially like that mentioning of he briefly entertains the notion that he's insane and didn't know that he was insane. Then he considers the possibility that he's always been insane. Acknowledge it is more likely than the former, then push both thoughts from my mind. What the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like, have I always been insane? Is this Truman Show? Is everybody just fucking like? I mean, eventually you just got to be like, yeah, let's. I gotta fucking focus on what I can actually control here.
Yeah, and I like to like when he looks at her and he's like her body was built to stretch, the arc of her back, the smooth expanse of her belly going taut, the round fullness of her breast was lifted by the motion of her arms, and suddenly I felt like a stag in rut. Like he's dipped himself into Heart of Stone, but like when he's looking at her, then he's feeling the magic. The magic is overtaking him even while he's in Heart of Stone. When he's like got this passive state where he can slaughter a guy and not think twice about stabbing a guy in his eye, cutting his throat, cutting his tendons. And he's not thinking about how disgusting that is, but just looking at her, she's overpowering his shit. And so it's obviously extremely powerful. And he's like, my control slipped for a moment, and a less disciplined piece of my mind started composing a song to her. Not for the training I'd received at the university, I would have been broke and pitiful thing, only able to concentrate on my own captivation. But he's able to kind of reel that in slightly, and then as Felurian slowly relaxed out of her stretch and looked at me with ancient eyes unlike anything I'd ever seen, there was a striking color. The summer dusk was in her eyes. And I like that aspect where he's like, eyes unlike anything I had ever seen. They were a striking color. And then he starts singing the song too. The summer dusk was in her eyes, a sort of twilight blue. They were fascinating. In fact, with lids of winged butterflies. And so he starts singing the song as he's describing her, and then he walls that side off of his mind. He like splits his mind apart and kind of walls it off, like utilizing what Abinthy taught him early on about breaking your mind into pieces. Just like he played that game with himself, he walls that piece of his mind off, like, go and sing to your heart's extent. Just stay out of my head so I can concentrate, and save us.
Yeah, stay out of the front of my mind. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it shows he's freaking brilliant, but also shows he's practiced. He's basically trained for this moment. Which is nuts, it's crazy to consider. And in many ways, man, like what he's accomplishing, what he's able to do, and we see it even clearer and further. But in many ways, it's even more impressive than what he just did with the bandits. Because this is an inside of his own mind, and he's being coerced by an extraordinarily powerful individual, and he's having to manage this all inside of his mind with his own effort. So it's pretty impressive.
It's a unreal writing, like this whole chapter. I mean, because it's much different than the rest of the book too. It's not like he does this for the whole book, but like there's so much poetry in this section, and in such descriptions, artistic descriptions. Like he goes into he gets real fancy with his writing in the Fae.
Well, and it's really interesting to also consider what he's created here. That the force that Kvothe is working against in the past, it's Ambrose.
Yeah.
Or it's in the class against other people, or he's trying to accomplish a task. This is like it's kind of an impartial. I mean, at least initially, she's kind of impartial. Like you said, she's like a child, and she wants what she wants to her heart's content, and not considering the results. So it's not necessarily like an evil force. It's more of a impartial, yet still, to the context of what the threat to him, it's an evil force for him.
She's definitely a danger. I mean,
well,
she's
yeah,
100% a danger to him.
Yes, but kind of my point is like it's a really interesting dynamic a wrinkle to it to put in here, that like he can't just like get up and leave. I mean, maybe he could, but he doesn't know that. So he basically has to own the scene, own like the situation he's in. And again, it's an interesting force to be put up against, because it's just sort of it's evident and active there in the space that he's inhabiting.
Yeah, and then so Felurian starts to speak up at this point. And so we get the first conversation with her, where she goes, "Why are you so quiet, Flame Lover? Have I quenched you?" Her voice was odd to my ear. It had no rough edges to it at all. that could be Kvothe being an unreliable narrator. Like, would she really bring up the fact that he's got red hair? Like, you would think like the flame lover, like she's not mentioning that. Like, that's probably something she didn't like. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't. That one I don't know. I would be with you if she was like, "Where's that cloak? Can you go get that cloak? You look so dashing.
Yeah,
you look so dashing in that cloak."
Oh, that cloak, man! When it billowed, whoa! I have some power, but god damn, you in that cloak! I almost had a heart attack, and I'm the one that gives men heart attacks, and you almost blew my heart out.
Jesus.
But yeah, so she goes and she comments on his gingerness, and despite its odd softness, Felurian's voice ran down my spine, making me feel like a cat that's been stroked down to the tip of its tail. It retreated further into Heart of Stone, felt it cool and reassuring around him. And then he goes, however, while the majority of my attention was focused on self-control, the small, mad, lyric part of my mind leapt to the fore and said, "Never quench, though I am doused in you, I burn. The motion of your turning head is like a song, is like a spark, is like a breath that billows me and fans the flame of fire that cannot help but spread and roar your name." So like he drops some lyrical bombs on the ladies. And
some slam jam poetry for her.
Yeah, this is the beginning of. I even had the note that this is a clever way that Rothfuss put in the beginning of the origins of him becoming a slam jam poet. Because Felurian's face lit up and she's like, "A poet? I should have known you for a poet by how your body moved. You look like a poet, fiery and fair. And so poets are gentler. They say nice things." And he goes, "There was only one person I'd ever heard whose voice was similar to this, a Loden. On rare occasions, his voice would fill the air as if the world itself were listening." So there is, I don't know if I brought it up before, but I haven't actually looked this up and listened to it. But I've heard people say that Rothfuss said in a stream that Loden is part Fae. And I don't know if that means that he was born in the Fae, or that he even knows he's part Fae, or if it's just a Fae went out into the world and had sex with a woman, or had sex with a man and gave birth to a Loden, or impregnated a woman, she gave birth to a Loden. I don't know if he's born in and out of the Fae, or what he's talked about as far as that goes, because it was like something I was like, if that's true, I want to find out in the book, but because it's a Loden, but it's possible that a Loden is part Fae, and I put credence in those rumors, even though I haven't seen the video, because of the shit like this, his voice and his power and all those kind of things. He does seem like might be part Fae, and he gives the gift of the single sinus fruit. Like there's that aspect of it that comes up in this, where she tells a story about a gift of a single sinus fruit is, a great insult to people in whatever part of the Fae. And so Loden gives a single sinus fruit to Ari, and so makes me think that he's at least familiar with some of the Fae, Fae customs, and he might have been testing Ari, and that might have been an example of that. So could be that Loden is part Fae.
Interesting. I mean, that's a clear connection between the two of them, and then he goes as far as even pointing it out, so much clearer.
Yeah, and hers is different. It's not, he says like his could fill a room. It was like hers wasn't, loud or anything like that, but it was the hush before a sudden summer storm. And then he's like, "Speaking thus, when she called me a poet, it did not raise my hackles or make me grit my teeth. From her, it sounded like the sweetest thing a man was ever called. Such was the power of her voice." And that right there, she put a spell on him. And that's why she made him more susceptible to becoming a slam jam poet. So when him and Ambrose become friends and they start, working on poetry together, that's where Rothfuss, man, he's a really good writer, where he laid the groundwork for the slam jam poetry right here in book 2. And people are going to look back at this and they're not even going to be like, they're right, but they saw it because of things like this, and they didn't just make this up.
Yeah, I mean, she. I guess it is. It is. It is
Clearly
Felurian.
foreshadowed. It's clearly foreshadowed in the book. It's not even in the subtext. It's right there in your freaking face.
Well, I was gonna say Felurian. She's a hell of a salesperson, man. She really convinced Kvothe. Which, by the way, just consider how well she would do as a salesperson for, say, a Jack in the Box.
She'd be pretty good. She seems like no, actually, she'd probably suck because like all these guys are, instead of ordering food, they're all just like taking all their clothes off and getting real weird with it.
Getting weird with it. How about she exotic dancer? I mean,
yeah, she'd be great at that.
She could be the Michael Jordan of
yeah,
strippers.
She would 100%.
I could see her.
You wouldn't have repeat customers, but it seems like she could attract people in from miles away.
The champagne room would be would be like a bunch of dead bodies on the floor. Yeah. I could see her like not just like, she'd be elevating stripping to, I think, to an art form,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, she would be doing burlesque shows, but blowing hearts out instead of blowing nips out.
I thought you were going another direction, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for keeping it clean.
Yeah. But yeah, and then so she sees that he's got a lute, and so she's like, "Is my flame a sweet poet? Does he sing?" And he looked, I looked into her eyes in a flash of understanding. I realized what her life must be like. 1,000 years old, lonely from time to time. She wanted companionship. She had to seduce and lure. So she has to like pull people into her. She's not just like hanging out with people all the time. She has to find people. And then if she's pulling people in from the woods, she's finding, bumpkins and, these, woodsmen and guys just roaming, bandits and that kind of shit. She's not finding like high quality entertainment. So she's just running through low quality, low entertaining dudes, not necessarily low quality dudes, but low entertainment value dudes. And so he's like, I felt a moment of pity for her. I know what loneliness is like, which is an interesting take by, Rothfuss and Kvothe, and, recognizing like, it's got to be, there'd be some major downsides to being her.
Yeah, that was an interesting. It goes in an interesting direction at that point where you kind of like, it also pretty intelligently mentions he understands what loneliness is and kind of hints towards what we eventually will be with his time in Tarbean. So it's kind of, he's very judicious with the way that. I mean, with all the sections of dialogue, but or prose, and this one especially, it kind of weaves in and out, and giving that perspective also is important for us with Kvothe because he's about to try to understand her much deeper, and then it's more instinctive, but still, I mean, he understands her to her marrow, right?
Yeah, and then he starts playing music for her, and he's like, "What do you play for the most beautiful woman in the world?" And so he decides to start playing her just songs of just the regular Joes of the world. Like, she's this
folk music
figure of the legendary figure. So yeah, play her folk music. And she was loving every minute of it. And, just playing Larm and his ale pot. I played her Blacksmith Daughters. I played her a ridiculous song about a priest chasing a cow that I'd written when I was 10 and never even named. Felurian laughed and applauded. She covered her mouth in shock and her eyes in embarrassment. The more I played, the more she reminded me of a young country wife attending her first fair, full of pure joy, face shining with innocent delight, eyes wide in amazement at everything she sees. So she's got that like childlike wonderment, even though she's thousands of years old. She's still got that like childlike wonderment to her. It's like just part of her nature. And then I like to mention, Anne Lovely, of course. I concentrated on my fingering so as not to think about it. Little double on Chandra there. And then I like also too where he's like, after each song she rewarded me with a kiss, and he's like, I'd come to realize rather quickly that I prefer kisses to coins. It's like, yeah, it's like that old Seinfeld joke, like men will trade sleep for sex every time.
yeah.
But yeah, so he plays her, and she sang Tinker Tailor with him. She dropped her own verse of Tinker Tailor.
I love that. That was one point that I really like, the idea of being able to see that in like movie or television form, like someone like her then jumping into like a drinking song, like his favorite drinking song. Take a lot of backstory and all that type of stuff to get there, but it's like a cool little moment to sort of picture that.
And then it mentions that he starts to kind of drop himself out of Heart of Stone because the mindlessness of it, or the dispassionate calm of it, it strips away. It doesn't make for good music. It doesn't make good for artistic endeavors. So he kind of slips out of that, which I think is important, because I don't think he would have been able to do what he did had he been as in deeply in Heart of Stone. I think he needed that, to be a little bit out of that, so that wild side of him would take control. So he mentions that, and then he tells her he's going to leave. He starts packing up his supplies, and then as soon as he tells her he's going to leave, it's like my mind went numb as quickly as if I'd been struck a blow to the back of the head. I felt passion, fierce and insatiable. I felt the need to have her, to crush her body to mine, to taste the savage sweetness of her mouth. And then he looks at her, and she's just sitting there, face angry and terrible, her eyes cold and hard as distant stars. And I love the way it ends with, there was such a weight of fury in her simple gesture that my stomach clenched, and I realized this fact. No one ever left Felurian. Ever. She kept men until their bodies and minds broke beneath the strain of loving her. She kept them until she tired of them. And when she sent them away, it was the leaving that drove men mad. I was powerless. I was a novelty. I was a toy. Favorite because it was newest. Might be a long while before she tired of me, but the time would come. And when she finally set me free, my mind would tear itself apart with wanting her.
Yeah, there's the realization that fuels the next chapter, right?
Yeah, I mean, he does such a great job of tying in the desire to go to the next chapter in this little section, like where it goes right there, where it's like he's sitting there saying, she's gonna break my mind, she's gonna do whatever she wants to me, and there's nothing I can do to stop her. And so you're like, oh shit, he's in the shit right now. And then my body was breaking, the chapter before that, when he's talking about like, my body art, and I was breaking. And then so you go a little bit further, he's keeps setting up the danger, ending the chapter with the danger of being with Felurian.
Well, and what's so tremendous, man, if you just give like the raw details of what does happen in these scenes, it's like, well, how can that work?
He just goes in and he has sex with her. Then he plays her music, and then she gets mad at him for trying to leave. And so then they fight, and then, then they make up.
Yeah.
It would have been, he could have saved so much time if he just wrote that. Same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. The fact that he's able to make those things so like important and difficult, and I mean just like riddled with nuance, it's tremendous, man. And it's like you said before, I mean, it's really poetic the way that he writes it himself, and it's the back and forth, and in particular how he's able to get to the descriptions are tremendous, especially in the next chapter, and how he's actually able to save himself. I mean, it's masterful. And that's what I was saying earlier. I mean, this is much more impressive in many ways. I shouldn't say much more, but it is more impressive in many ways than what he did with the bandits, because he's doing it within himself, and he's having to do something no one's ever done before.
Yeah, I mean, what he does here is crazy, and I think there's cool aspects of it. So like in chapter 97, titled Blood and Bitter Rue, he fights off Felurian. She tries to take control of him, and he ends up calling her name and calling the name of the wind, and fights her off. It's an intense fucking moment for him.
Yeah, it is. It's I mean, it's again, it's that tremendous ability that he has to create something that's really poetic, really tremendous imagery, like really, really great imagery in itself. But it's not just things you see. It's like the imagery of what Kvothe is experiencing, which curious to see how that can be portrayed, but it reads fucking tremendously, and yeah, it's intense. Talk about tension, shit.
Well, and you get like, he says, I felt a cold wave of cold sweat sweep over my body. I clenched my jaw and felt a small anger flare up. Over the course of my life, my mind has been the only thing I've always been able to rely on, the only thing that has always been entirely mine, which is this anger is what saves him. And he talks about like he's started melting as my natural desires were replaced by some animal thing, unable to think beyond its own lust. That animal thing coming to the forefront too, combined with that anger, it ends up waking his sleeping mind. Like, I mean, Loden describing it as like a bear that's been hibernating. We get the bear wakes the fuck up in this chapter.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Well, and it's I love that dichotomy of he's torn between like animal lust and rage, and which is the rage of not having control of his mind, and he goes to a place of when he didn't have control and can access rage that we hadn't even really been fully aware of that was even accessible.
yeah,
And it's fucking tremendous.
and it's all happened because he when he played her music, he started to let himself out of the heart of stone, and so he kind of gave opened himself up to his emotions and to that sleeping mind aspect or natural instinct animal side. And then when she pressed down on him, it was the anger and the animal desires were kind of warring with each other, but then they kind of just snapped into place into we have to fight back for our life. And so he's like, the part of me that was still Kvothe raged, but I felt my body respond to her presence. With a horrible fascination, I felt myself crawl through the cushions towards her. So it's like part of his mind, because of the heart of stone and because of the sleeping mind, he's still got some kind of control. And so he's like almost seeing himself do these things, and he's seeing himself lose control but he's still got a piece of him left that is witnessing him lust after her and lose himself to her. And then he's like, I howled inside my own mind. I've been beaten and whipped, starved and stabbed, but my mind is my own. No matter what becomes of this body or the world around, I threw myself against the bars of an intangible cage made of moonlight and desire. And somehow I held myself away from her. My breath tore out of my throat as if racing to escape. I closed my eyes, but somehow that only made it worse. The heat of her body was like standing near the fire. So he's just, he's warring with that animal side that she's using her magic against him, and he's fighting it, but that this fighting is starting to wake something up inside of him. And it's a great build up to just this he keeps getting angrier, like nobody does this to me. And I opened my eyes again and saw her staring at me. Her expression was innocent, almost hurt, as if she couldn't understand being refused. I nursed my small flame of anger. No one did this to me. No one. Love that fucking line where you just see him like, no, I'm fucking Kvothe. I don't care if you're Felurian. You could be the most powerful, sex goddess on the planet, but you don't fucking get to control me.
Well, and what's interesting about that as well, and the fact that he has to feed that rage, is, I mean, you could totally understand him feeling bad because this has never happened to her before, and she's an innocent creature. So she could kill him, and he needs to do this. But you could see him also feeling bad. The way he describes it, almost like dispassionate. She's confused. It's like she's confused and slightly hurt, almost hurt, as if she couldn't understand being refused. So she's trying to like work it out, like what the fuck is going on here, And but he's doing it. He's doing what he's got to do, which is his deprivation.
And then we get, I'd read it before in a previous episode, when he snaps back, when she touches his face and bends to kiss him, he, at this point, like his sleeping mind fully breaks to the forefront. And I think this is a good flashback to, and good evidence towards the fact that when his parents died and the troop was killed, and he went into the woods and he was playing his music by himself, he was playing all these songs, and then like when he's in Tarbean and he was just kind of this animal side to him, this feral state, I think that his sleeping mind was running the show during these moments. And so I think when he was playing his music, he was naming. And I think, you know, when he wasn't using his magic, he wasn't thinking, he wasn't as intelligent. It's because his sleeping mind was in control. It's like rational mind was gone. And so I think we get a good demonstration of that sleeping mind taking over here, because he snaps. He starts thinking about the time where he was almost raped. He breaks a kid's arm, breaks his head, and just goes into feral state where he's just going crazy on these kids and just completely snaps. And when he's in that state, that's when he looks at Felurian, he sees her. He sees, her name, her true name, and he sees the name of the wind. And when he says her true name, he sings it. He sings out 4 notes. And so it's very similar to the time where he was in the woods singing how a leaf turns and all those kind of things. I think he was naming in that woods, and I think this is a more powerful, more life is on the line situation. But I do think that gives further evidence that his sleeping mind was in control in those scenes as well.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there's it's a different context in the sense that, I mean, if he's naming Felurian, he could kill her, right? So there's a big difference in that aspect. But yeah, I agree with you. I think, and that also accounts for why he didn't play music for money. Why he didn't? I mean, all the different things he could have done. He's a trooper. He could have, acted. He could have. There's all types of things he could have done in Tarbean for money, rather than trying to just scrape by. But if he's in that sleeping mind state for that such a long period of time, that would account for the fact that he's not problem solving.
Yeah, and I don't
Not
think it's random
sense.
that Rothfuss reaches back to Tarbean as the
Yeah.
moment when his mind breaks. That the first thing he thinks of is a moment in Tarbean, the last time his mind was broken. And so I think that when his mind broke the first time, it was the sleeping mind took over. And this time I think it was the case again, although it didn't, it wasn't such a traumatic experience where, he wasn't coming up because he didn't want to remember his parents dying. But I think it's a demonstration. I don't think it's just a random Rothfuss was like, we'll say, something bad. The memory of something bad in Tarbean, where it could have easily been like a memory of being attacked in the alley and at the university or something along those lines. I think he specifically chose Tarbean is because that was the last time his sleeping mind was in control.
Yeah. Well, and just for the record, reading this again, it sounds like it wasn't he almost was raped. He was raped.
Yeah,
But
it
the
could be. I
instant,
mean, they were holding him down. He ended up knocking them to the ground and scrabbling. My scrabbling hand found a loose cobblestone, and I used it to break one of his legs. I remember the noise it made. I flailed until his arms were broken, and then I broke his head. I mean, it could be the case that he got away, but they were definitely trying to.
yeah, I mean, well, he got away, but it happened. And then also that again is it's pretty fucking vicious, man. Like he breaks a get dude's leg, breaks he got his arm broken as well, but then he breaks dude's arms and then breaks his head. I mean, he fucking beat the shit out of this fucking dude
Yeah,
and bit another person's fingers off.
yeah. Yeah, so whether they completed the
That was
act or not,
rough.
they had him naked and ready to rape him, and then he whooped the shit out of him. But then he's like, suddenly years later, I was that feral boy again. I jerked my head back and snarled inside my mind. I felt something deep inside myself. I reached for it. That, I mean, again, I was that feral boy again.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is when he's in control of his sleeping mind. That feral boy was his sleeping mind was in control. I think it's almost surely that's the case of what was happening to him in Tarbean. We speculate a lot on that in the early episodes. I think this is the clearest evidence that that is exactly what was happening to him, is that his sleeping mind took over. He went behind the doors of madness, or the doors of sleep, or a combination of both, and the sleeping mind took over.
Yeah, I think that's a really reasonable, logical connection.
And then we get, I felt the air begin to crystallize around me. I felt cold, detachedly. I gathered up the pieces of my mind and fit them all together. I was Kvothe the trooper, a Dima reborn. I was Kvothe the student, Relar under a Loden. I was Kvothe the musician. I was Kvothe. He's such a dope writer, man.
Yeah.
Like, just the way he fucking puts all that shit.
The part right before that I thought is really tremendous. A tense stillness settled inside of me, the sort of silence that comes before a thunderclap, and that was when I felt the air begin to crystallize around me. It's fucking awesome, man. Like he's reaching for this feeling that he has, which is that feeling he had in Tarbeen, it's that sleeping mind, and then it all just sort of comes together. And then he rallies, he gives himself
Mm-hmm.
that little pep talk, and then he stands above Florian. And you can picture the whole thing. He stands up and he's like, I'm Kvothe.
Yeah.
The fuck are you?
Yeah, and he's like, I felt as if this was the only time in my life I had been fully awake. Everything looked clear and sharp, as if I was seeing with a new set of eyes, as if I wasn't bothering with my eyes at all, and was looking at the world directly with my mind, the sleeping mind. Some piece of me realized faintly, no longer sleeping, I thought, and smiled. So, and that's another aspect of it, too, is like he's a kid in Tarbean dealing with trauma. So he's like kind of, locked some of his mind behind this, the doors of sleep or the doors of madness, but is still in that kind of feral state where the sleeping mind is awake. Maybe it's not, you know, perfectly accurate to say the sleeping mind was awake, but it was a sleeping mind state where maybe he didn't fully, it was very unconscious. Whereas this is a scenario where he's very conscious of his sleeping mind taking control and the power that it grants him. I don't think he fully grasped what was going on to him in Tarbean. I think that's one of the main
Well,
differences.
and a big part of the difference also, he knew how to break his mind up into different pieces, but he hadn't trained to utilize those pieces in such a way as he now has all that training.
Yeah, and he
So
hadn't like
he
called the name of the wind and trained with the Loden and all their jackassery, and so like it's a different experience now that he's older and he knows what's happening.
yeah, he's got perspective, which he didn't have before. I mean, what he was basically, I mean, he was shocked into that state, right? And then it was just sort of a kill or be killed scenario. In this sense, it's a kill or be killed scenario, but he has weapons of his mind. He's kind of he's been rallying. He's been rallying for the last two chapters, right? I mean, he's depriving himself to be able to make sure that he can get out of this. You
Yeah,
know, so now he's in that rallying state, and now he's also accessing what he needs to access. Which, by the way, just the visuals of it are pretty insane to consider. He's in this like nirvana like place, right? With this like the most beautiful woman in the world laying on silks and all this shit, and he's picturing one of the worst moments he's ever lived through in his entire life. Probably the
yeah,
second worst moment that happened to him in his life
yeah, yeah.
to fuel the fire.
It's nuts. And then like, and this is another thing. Like, how do you recreate this on a TV show? Like, just
Yeah,
because so much of it is just happening in his mind. And so, I mean, you could have
flashback. Yeah,
like as cool as like some of the phrasing and the sentences, like he where he's like, he's like, I looked at Felurian, and in that moment, I understood her down to the bottoms of her feet. She was of the Fae. She did not worry over right or wrong. She was a creature of pure desire, much like a child. A child does not concern itself with consequence. Neither does a sudden storm. Felurian resembled both in neither. She was ancient and innocent and powerful and proud. Was this the way Elodin saw the world? Was this the magic he spoke of? Not secrets or tricks, but Tamerlane the great magic, always there, but beyond my seeing until now. It was beautiful. Like, so, like, you can describe that in words where he's like seeing the world with this new vibrancy, and like he's seeing it down to its essence. He's seeing the molecules and the atoms, and he understands how everything works together. And he's seeing the world with eyes that just you can't see. It's like he's having a freaking DMT trip or something where he's like seeing another plane of existence. And how do you do that on it, visually, through a television show, unless you have like a narrator? So you lose like a little bit of that aspect of this, the beauty of so much of what makes this book and these books unique and different is his writing style, his prose, and you don't have prose in a TV show,
Yeah.
so you're gonna lose that aspect of it. And it's one of those things where it's like, man, one of the strongest parts of this is the prose, and you're gonna lose that.
I mean, the one of the things that does kind of come to mind because you're bringing it up, how do you do it? Is I'm picturing like the green binary codes of the Matrix, where they're seeing what holds it all together. It's not beautiful,
No.
it doesn't paint that picture, but it is something that did work for the film, right? It did work in that sense because we could see sort of what they were going for.
And if it worked with the Matrix, it will work in anything else. So you just redo it. You just do it the exact same thing, just ones and zeros, green ones and zeros.
So like, oh, so that's what this is.
I take back my concern, and yeah, you can do it easly. The Matrix did it, so there, it's problem solved. So we can move on from that. But yeah, then he's like, I met Felurian's eyes, and the world grew slow and sluggish. I felt as if I had been thrust underwater, as if my breath had been pressed from my body. For that tiny moment, I was stunned and numb, as if I had been struck by lightning. And so he starts like seeing her true name. It like thrust him underwater. It felt like it was too much. It was too much when he saw it. And then he's like, the moment passed and things began to move again. But now, looking into Felurian's twilight eyes, I understood her far beyond the bottoms of her feet. Now I knew her to the marrow of her bones. Her eyes were like 4 lines of music clearly penned. My mind was filled with the sudden song of her. I drew a breath and sang it out in 4 hard notes. Like, that's singing magic. And it's different. Like, even when he talks about the name of the wind here, he doesn't talk about like he sung out notes for the name of the wind. He saw the name of the wind and he spoke a name. He just spoke a name. But with Felurian, it's like her name is much more complex. Like Loden talks about one of the complexities, and one of his reasons he was able to see her name, where Loden was like, it's pretty impressive that you could speak someone's true name. And he's like, he probably, had you known how difficult it is, you probably wouldn't have been able to do it. And I think one of the reasons he was able to do it is because it was like a musical thing to him. He saw it as music. And I think that is a callback to the time in the woods when he was playing, like How a Leaf Turns. I think he's practiced these things and seeing the true names of things in his music. And so when he saw her true name, he saw it in a musical aspect, and then he sang out the 4 notes. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we're getting Tarbean, the feral child, and then when he sees Felurian's name, he sings it out, and it's like he struck these 4 chords. And so I think it is a callback to the preparation that was done while he was in a feral state as a kid after his parents were killed.
So that's interesting. So the first few parts that you mentioned gets him to the place where he can even be in the state of being able to access her name.
Yeah.
But when he sees it, it would be something that a musician can interpret. Because the way he sees it, her eyes were like 4 lines of music, clearly penned. So he's able to interpret that, and basically what you're getting at is many would not be. Like, what Loden says, it would be nearly impossible. If you knew how hard it was, you wouldn't even likely be able to do it. But with his background, that's the thing. He's got the makeup for it.
Yeah, 100%. It was like Rothfuss was Mr. Miyagi, training Kvothe during, when his parents died, putting him through the training of in the woods, playing the music in that feral state, so that when this moment came around, all that stuff that he went through in his youth and all that practice and everything, it all came to fruition here. And he was able to use it to call the name of, one of the most famous figures in the world in Felurian. And he was able to call her name and control her because of what happened to him as a kid.
I remember being actually, even this time around, I was actually in a way surprised because he just goes right at it. He sees it and calls it. He doesn't just hold it. You know what I'm saying? Like hold it hostage. Like you would think, I mean, whenever I hear about, if somebody has your name, you would think they would not necessarily just call it out the second they see it. Of course, that's kind of Kvothe's move. definitely fits his thing, but also the situation he's in, obviously.
And there's a line too, like because he calls her name, and then he doesn't gain mastery over her yet. And then it was like there was a pain like thunder in my head. Darkness flickered at the edges of my sight. I tasted blood and bitter rue. Like it's too much. It was like too much to control her.
Well,
This is part of the difficulty. Or like, is this something that she's doing? Is it her fighting back? Is what he's feeling?
yeah, it seems like she claps back, right? Because she passed her hand before her eyes and spoke. She sat upright, then she passed her hand before her eyes and spoke a word as sharp as shattered glass. And then there was a pain like thunder in my head. So it seemed like, that what she did was a reaction, and it's like a knee jerk, immediate reaction to being basically attacked.
Yeah.
That's the way I saw it. That she claps back, and but
yeah, it could. Yeah, that could be exactly what it was. But yeah, it seems like that's likely what's going on. Is like she's pushing back against, not even necessarily like pushing back like she's trying to hurt him or something. It was almost just like this is just when you're pressing against her, calling her name, like she starts speaking a name and fighting against that without even necessarily and not even necessarily doing it as a she's trying to harm him or something along those lines. It's just it's like a reaction.
Yeah, I think it's self-defense. I think every individual creature, whatever, is like when you're threatened, man, you have a natural inclination
but
in
it's
your being to fight back or defend yourself.
But her like power is like to make you feel passion towards her. So I don't even think she was like trying to like fight back. Like he's trying to kill me. I gotta fucking kill him. Because then she's like takes a step towards him. And another step. Her smile was fierce and full. She was as lovely as the moon. Her power hung about her like a mantle. It shook the air. It spread behind her like a pair of vast and unseen wings. So she's fighting back with this magical power, but the magical power is like this overwhelming desire for her where you lose your freaking mind and you have no control over your own thoughts anymore. It is the power that she exudes.
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking, I mean, if she had a pole there, she'd be spinning on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. That's her weapon.
She's swinging between poles, going from one to one. If she walked into a restaurant and swung on a pole, she's getting a standing ovation for sure.
Well, she elevates it, man. That's what it sounds like.
But then, she met my eyes, and in the twilight written there, I saw again the 4 clear lines of song. I sang them out. They burst from me like birds into the open air. So he names her again, and then suddenly my mind was clear again. I drew a breath and held her eyes in mine. I sang again, and this time I was full of rage. I shouted out the 4 hard notes of song. I sang them tight and white and hard as iron. And at the sound of them, I felt her power shake, then shatter, leaving nothing in the empty air but ache and anger. So this time, the third time he says her name, it breaks her power. He overpowers her at that point. And Felurian gave a startled cry and sat so suddenly that it was almost like a fall. She curled her knees towards herself and huddled, watching me with wide and frightened eyes. Comes like a child. She's like completely in his control now. And she's like, oh, shit. What did I bring in here?
Yeah, I mean, and what is she used to doing? She's used to owning everybody that comes in.
Yeah, and then she's like,
until they die. Now she's owned.
Yeah, and she's probably, there's probably like 5 people she's met in her entire existence that have that kind of power that could name her. Yeah. When she is, using her power to fight back, and he's able to use his power to overpower her. There's probably not many people in the entire history of the world who would be able to do that to her. And Kvothe does it. And again, I don't think it's unearned. I think a lot of people talk about like, oh yeah, then he's, got the power to name her. I think Rothfuss laid the tracks with what happened in, his childhood in Tarbean for this very moment. And I think that's why he calls back to those moments, and that that he sings her name. And it's not just that he says her name, he sings it. I think it's a callback to, the preparation that he already put in the books. But it's just, he hides these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, but I mean, I agree with you 100%. It's he's giving the evidence as he's delivering it. I mean, he's telling you why these things are possible. You know what I mean? It's not out of the blue. Yeah, her name is out of the blue, but that's how naming works. That's how the sleeping mind works. That it's those dark, intense moments. He's fighting for his life. You know? So
Yeah.
and then and on top of it, we're getting delivered again one of the probably the second worst moment in his entire life, which we weren't actually even aware of in full capacity. So I mean, it's not like it just happened out of the clear blue sky.
No, not at all. But yeah, and then he calls the name of the wind. He's like, I laughed and spread my arms, marveling at its shifting shape. I cupped my hands and breathed a sigh into the hollow space within. I spoke a name. Again, he spoke a name that time. It's not he sang out, and I think that demonstrating how complex Felurian's name is. And, it makes clear that I think Elodin is accurate when he's like, you spoke Felurian's name. That's what happened. But he's like, I moved my hands and wove my breath gossamer thin. It billowed out, engulfing her, then burst into a silver flame that trapped her tight inside its changing name. Now that you could probably make a cool visual imagery of him picking her up with the wind, and it's like a silver flame going around her as she's kind of trapped and held within it. He has full control over her. He's like, I knew that I could kill her. It would be as simple as throwing a sheet of paper to the wind, but the thought sickened me, and I was reminded of ripping the wings from a butterfly. Killing her would be destroying something strange and wonderful. A world without Felurian was a poorer world. A world I would like a little less. It would be like breaking Ilian's loot. It would be like burning down a library in addition to ending a life. So I like the callbacks there, like the ripping the wings from a butterfly, which is what the Kvothe does.
Yeah.
Then also a world without Felurian would be a poor world. A world I would like a little less. It would be like breaking Ilian's loot. So maybe Ilian's loot gets broken. Also a world like burning down a library, which the burning of Calatina, which I would bet money that the Emir did that. And so I think, those lines might stand out even more once we know the third book, but those are interesting that he mentioned, especially like the pulling the wings off a butterfly, given the Kvothe comes up in these chapters.
What if Kvothe ends up burning down the library while ending a life?
And breaking Ilian's loot.
Yeah, maybe he does all those things.
Pulling a butterfly those wings off all at the same exact time.
Okay. Well, that clearly is a callback to the Kvothe, but the reason why I bring it up is, I mean, what would be... So if the doors of stone are at the library, if that the 4-plate door we know is at the library, something behind the 4-plate door, and what goes down goes down. Some of the most painful things for Kvothe to have to endure, one would be burning the library. That'd be a horrific blow to the world.
Yeah, it could be that he accidentally burns down the library of the university. What a fucking loss.
In addition to ending a life. So ending a life and what I do hope is that Lauren... I was gonna say... I was waiting for you to finish, because I was going to be like, and then you will see like Lauren being like, I knew it. I knew I should have never let you in here. I told Elodin that if I let him back in, he would burn this place down, but no one ever listens to me. He's actually screaming.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, shit. If he can't scream then, man.
And then he starts laughing like maniacally, like he starts laughing from being so angry, and laughing at the how the I told you of it. And then Kvothe is like, pay me, whoever made that bet, I made him laugh right there, now you owe me money. I think his Mandrake's got the standing offer if you can make him laugh.
I forgot all about that. Maybe that would be the thing that... Yeah, maybe that would be the thing that breaks him. He goes into like like you said, maniacal, like crazy person laugh.
Yeah, it like completely breaks him. But and then so he's like, on the other hand, my safety and sanity were at stake. I believe the world was more interesting with Kvothe in it as well. I love that little line there. It's fun,
Yeah.
funny little line. It's like, yeah, on the other hand, I'm pretty dope too. And I would rather be alive than not. And so, but he spoke again. The wind brought her down among the pillows. I made a tearing motion, and the silver flame that had once been my breath became 3 notes of broken song and went to play among the trees. So he sets her free, and then she sat and she's looking at him in like going from fear to caution to curiosity. She's like, what the fuck did I let in here? And not only is this dude like a sweet poet, but this dude's got crazy power. He's legit dangerous. And then he starts to feel it fade. And he's like, I forgetting, I realized the name of the wind no longer filled my mouth. When I looked around, I saw nothing but empty air. I tried to remain outwardly calm, but as these things left me, I felt like a lute whose strings were being cut. My heart clenched with a loss I hadn't felt since my parents died. It's a pretty intense loss right there.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a way to describe it.
Yeah, that was a little bit surprising to me. Like I forgot about how intense that really is, which kind of makes me feel like, well, it makes me remember back when you would, the drug days, the crazier the drug is, the like further it goes, the bigger the drawback, the bigger the fucking
come down
recovery. Yeah, the hangover, the recovery, the come down. Yeah. So it kind of resembled that to me to a degree. But he also visited a fucking awful place. So there's also that. I mean, a lot going on in old Duder's brain here, man.
Yeah, I mean, and the impetus of this was a flashback to his time in Tarbean, almost getting raped, and right after his parents died and all that kind of shit. So yeah, it's swelling up some bad memories, and he's losing the power, and now he's back at Felurian's mercy again. So it'd be scary, and it's an extremely intense moment that he goes through. Like, I don't care what else happened in the Fae. Just these opening couple of chapters would be like, yeah, no, the Fae's fucking dope. Like, did you not read this chapter when he fought Felurian? Like, that's fucking dope. I don't know how you read that as a fantasy fan and you're not like, yeah, it's fucking dope. What are you talking about?
By the way, so I've read the book, so I know what ends up happening, but if you hadn't and it leaves here, it is fucking dangerous, man. Like, this is like fighting Fella. Like, you thought you had the upper Fella, fighting Debbie. At one point, he started the fight and he got his fucking ass kicked. Not only did he start the fight, he fucking almost killed her and then said, I'm not going to kill you, though. And then he loses it. Like, and then it all goes away and it's like, oh, shit. Like, now what? Now what the fuck do I do?
Yeah, and he's like, then even the and I like that. I could see a slight shimmer in the air around Felurian, some shred of her power returning. I ignored it as I struggled frantically to keep some part of what I had learned, but it was like trying to hold a handful of sand. If you've ever dreamed of flying, then come awake, dismayed to realize you had lost the trick of it. You have some inkling of how I felt. I like that description, like, because I have had dreams. Usually, though, like if I have a dream where I can fly, I realize I'm dreaming, and it's like I got maybe like a very short amount of time before I'm gonna wake up. Yeah. And so like I just immediately, like, if I realize I'm dreaming, I just take off and try to fly. And so sometimes I get up in the air, but the realization of like I shouldn't be able to do this, but I'm dreaming, and so I should have superpowers. Like, I fight that impulse where I can fly, but then I'm like jumping super high, but keep coming back down. I can't fly for very long. I've had that dream so many times, and then I finally wake up. It's just like trying to hold on. It's not even so much like waking up and dismayed I lost the ability to fly. It's like the trying to hold on to the dream so that now that I realize I'm dreaming, so I can control it and do what I want. That is the fleeting moment that I always feel, but that's what it reminds me of.
It's the hanging on that wakes me up. It's the exertion, that ends up waking me up. I've even like one night I hit my wife in my sleep because I was fighting in my dream. I was like protecting one of my children, and I like hit her in the like hit her in the face, and she woke up like, "Whoa, the fuck!" I mean, luckily I didn't have a lot of power. I don't know
Yeah.
about you and your dreams, but that's the whole thing. Is like you take so it's like sympathy. Damn it! It
Mhm.
takes so much more effort just to move your own arms that I tried
I
so hard that I ended up fucking hitting her.
my sister insanely had me watch Nightmare on Elm Street when I was like 6 years old. And
Jeez, man.
so I had horrible nightmares for years after that. And I would have the same recurring nightmare where I had to fight Freddy Krueger. So like it made me terrified to sleep for a long time because it was like, man, every
Jeez.
time I go to sleep, I'm fighting for my life. And it was horrible. It was, don't show your
No.
6-year-olds Nightmare on Elm Street, just pro tip. But because this happened, I started to realize I'm dreaming when Freddy Krueger would show up in my dreams. It was happening so much, then I would realize I was dreaming, and then once I realized I was dreaming and I could control it, then I could do whatever I wanted to Freddy Krueger in my dreams, and I could fight back and make weapons appear out of my hands. And then I'm like shooting bazooka, and my hands are becoming bazookas and shit, and like I'm blowing Freddy Krueger apart. Like, the little
Wow.
kid
Okay.
aspects of your mind where you're like, now that I can fight back, I'm gonna have bazooka hands. Like that
There's
kind of little kid shit.
You're Kvothe in training, bro.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Using that sympathy or whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, that's where I think, I why I seem to remember my dreams more than, or realize I'm dreaming more than a lot of people. But then we get, then even the perfect vision of my sleeping mind began to fade. I looked desperately at the world around me. I tried to memorize the sight of it, unblinking. Then it was gone. I bowed my head, half in grief, half to hide the tears.
Yeah, that is badass, man. Like again, I would second what you said. I mean, the writing in these chapters is tremendous. What he's been able to weave to give himself the platform to do what he does here is great. There's a section that I just wanted to, like a couple sentences I wanted to point out because I think it's probably the most whimsical these books get. And it's when he does decide he's not going to kill her. He says, I spoke again, and the wind brought her down among the pillows. I made a tearing motion, and the silver flame that once had been my breath became 3 notes of broken song and went to play among the trees.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I mean, when you're in the moment, it's really intense. And then it's getting kind of like, he's got control here, but he makes this decision. He doesn't want to kill her because the world's better with her than without her. And then he decides he's going to let her go. And then, but like that coming apart, I mean, it definitely sticks with what we were talking about earlier, the ethereal nature of the world. The idea of he does this and it becomes 3 notes of broken song that went to play among the trees is just, again, that's, he doesn't speak like that. I don't know if anywhere else in the books.
No, he doesn't. And what it reminds me of is like, if you hear like the wind blow through like trees and you hear the sound or like go through wind chimes, it might even be a better example. Like, and you just hear the music play, like that kind of thing where he sent the wind out and it was making a noise. But like, because of the nature of this world, it's almost like a living thing, the wind. And so it, that breath that he blew out, went and blew through the trees, but to him it's like 3 notes of music, and so that's how he sees it. But like if you're just a person in that world, you probably just feel a breeze come blowing past you and through the trees. But Kvothe sees the wind as like this living, creature that he's created.
And I guess in a way that in particular is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think it's tremendous. It kind of also hints at a big part of what I like so much about Ari's book. It's the license he gives himself by creating the platform that is like this world that is the Fae with Felurian and the whole dynamic that's involved there and everything that Kvothe has become to get there in the first place. It's great. I mean, the combination of all the different aspects that go into it, and then his ability to be able to tell it in such a unique way is
What's going to be real hard is to recreate is you have this woman that is going to have to be extremely attractive, extremely desirable, and you're going to have to portray it as not just like, the dog fucking painting tongue out, type of thing. It is like this is extremely dangerous. This attraction could kill you. This is a danger. It's that buildup of how powerful she is, and you're fighting for control. Like it's a war that is going on between his mind and controlling himself, and then the war, once he gets control of himself, becomes a war between him and her, and they're competing powers. And it's so when you're showing this, it's going to be hard to show them like, getting together and having sex, and it's this beautiful thing, and not turn it into like, oh, whoa, man, I'm so into you. And like, like a dog painting with his tongue out.
It's hard to do without cheap
Yeah.
imagery.
Yeah. How do you do it without making it, making it what all the people that criticize it, what they say it is? How do you,
cheapen it,
create it and not do it in a cheap way where it is this amazing work of art is what he creates here. And it's going to be very hard to recapture what he did in a TV show.
I think, unfortunately, it probably will just be cut.
No, you can't cut Felurian.
It's much easier. It's a hell of a lot easier to do it.
You can't cut Felurian. What are you not going to have the Fae? Felurian is too pivotal. Too much pivotal shit happens in the Fae. You can't cut the Fae.
If you do a poll of like large, whatever I've seen, large audiences, it's part of the biggest. It's a piece of the biggest part of the books that, for whatever reason, creates animosity.
So what? Like
that's a large portion of the audience.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't cut that out. Like it's too pivotal.
But the reason why I bring that up is that would be a reason that they would look for to cut it. Plus, it's easier to cut than then try to create the world, because it creates so many challenges. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. I could see that being something that gets done. If it was my job as director, this would be one of the parts that I would look forward to the most.
Yeah,
because you have
like
the biggest artistic license.
And to me, it's
or like art director.
It's like how it would be the most challenging aspect, but I don't. It's way too fucking pivotal. Like, I mean, this is where you get the Felurian talking about Iac stealing the moon, the creation. That's what started the creation war. The Kvothe, he gets his cloak. There's too much pivotal.
What you're
shit
focusing
happening
on there is the true overall arc of the story. That's what I would like to hope. That's what I would hope would get done. Unfortunately, many times these things get adapted. They say this is going to be a story about a magician that goes to a university.
Yeah, but Rothfuss has enough control over it that
I would hope
that he's not going to just let them butcher his books. He's got enough control. We know he's got enough control, because if he had no control, there would already be 3 movies out by now. They would have just started putting this shit out, and they wouldn't be waiting on him, and they wouldn't have Lin-Manuel, whatever his name is, Miranda. They wouldn't have him like working on songs forever. He's out of it. He's not working on it anymore. But they wouldn't have been working for so long. They would have just start putting shit out. They would have put a movie together, and they would have just cut it down, and they had someone do their own thing, their own image of Name of the Wind, and just told, once they got the rights to it, they would have just did their own thing. They wouldn't be sitting on it.
So I just watched the Curb Your Enthusiasm season that has Lin-Manuel Miranda in it.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the guy that plays him. I don't know if that's actually him or not. I don't know much about him. But he's kind of a dick. And he's kind of like a pretentious kind of, pompous, artistic sort of dick. So I when you say like he's out of it, like it sounds like dollars, right? Because be fucking hot shit and
No, he
Hamilton and all
was
that
he
shit.
was he was like, we couldn't crack the code. We couldn't figure out
Mm,
how to do it. And that's why clearly Rothfuss has some control, because there would be no couldn't crack the code. They would have just did something
yeah.
and just
Well,
put it out.
that's what happens in the episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't know if you've seen it, but that's what happens is Larry just loses control
Yeah.
because Lin-Manuel Miranda gets the desk and Larry's sitting in a small chair. So because he doesn't have the desk, fucking he just yeah, I guess we could do that. He just loses
Yeah.
all control.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean that's I like hearing shit like that. That's good. That's good that because fuck man, clearly he has the vision. He knows what he wants, and especially man, because when they say can't crack the code, I'm like I'm picturing the lay of Sir Sabian Trailiard, man. That's the fucking that's like the moment that like obviously the first moment is like all right, what's this world gonna look like when they try to put it in visual form from what I've read and who they're casting, all that bullshit is one thing, but once you get to like that performance, that really tells you, were they able to deliver, on and fuck, I don't even know what the song sounds like really,
Yeah. I mean, we just know it's perfect. And
Yeah.
like, how do you
What does
do
perfect sound
Yeah,
like?
exactly. And that's you also hear this like with a lot of Sanderson's fan. They're like, oh, you could never do the storm, like the magic systems are so complex, blah 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 blah, and so you have to do animation or anime. I don't think those are problems. I think the technologies. I mean, we see like there's nothing any Marvel hero magic that they have to shelve because it's just not possible. Movie magic, they do it all. Like they do insane shit. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, watch the Avengers. Like there's every type of magic you can imagine is in those movies, and so you could see guys flying around and throwing shit and pulling in lightning and storms and all that kind of crap. You could see that. You can see the mechanics of it, or the actual demonstration of the magic. What would be hard is
What we
how
just read.
explaining the magic and explaining how it works, because it's a hard magic system. So there's limits to it. And so like the way they explain it in the books, they go through. He's like I could do this magic and it has these limitations, and this one is the harder one, and this one I had to use more Steinlight. And so they explain the system. Like, how do you do that in a movie without it
I
becoming a
mean,
lecture and boring?
mm-hmm.
And then,
Well, with Abinthy, when he leads Kvothe initially, you can do something like that. But
yeah,
dude, and then also like the hot foot, man, that's
correct,
gotta
yeah,
happen. That's
yeah.
gotta
With
happen. It's
that,
too
that's
great.
that's a problem Rothfuss solved in the book. Like his magic system, like the scenes where he explains the magic, those are some of the dopest scenes in the book.
Yeah,
So you don't have to
yeah,
change anything for him. It's a little
yeah.
different. Like in Stormlight Archive, like the first description of the magic, you're just in Zeth's head, and he's just telling you how the magic system works. Can't do that. And so that would have to be explained differently. That would be harder, but that can be done. And so like the magic system, I don't think that's the problem. I think Stormlight is much easier to make a live action show than Name of the Wind, because a lot of the strength of Name of the Wind is the prose, the music, and the descriptions of things. Like that is what is you know makes it a unique story, and that element is going to be hard to
Well,
represent in
well,
a live action show.
what we just read. I mean, what kind of act? I mean, you're gonna have DiCaprio, like the acting, and to be able to portray what we just read, the struggle within that type of shit.
Yeah,
That's gonna be real difficult, man. You're gonna have to have been able to lay some groundwork on like face face work, like furrowing the brow. Like what's he doing? Like it'd be very
yeah,
difficult, man. Very
yeah.
difficult.
It would be a challenging. It would be a story, like if I was a producer, this is the kind of story I would want to produce, because I think it stretch you where it would be hard to figure out. But if you did, I think you could put something. The story's amazing, so you would have something amazing on your hands if you could do it right. But it's gonna be hard to do it right.
Well, but it is that thing of like if you can do it right, like look at what the Matrix did. right? Or whatever it is. I mean, think of the examples. When you brought up Zeth in that first scene, I would literally show that the way it appears visually, just to wow the freaking audience, you know?
Yeah,
and
I think Stormlight you could
reinvent.
do. I don't think it would be that difficult to do Stormlight live action. I think it'd be fucking dope, and I don't think it would be that difficult. Like it's not the showing pros and all that kind of shit, or like the perfect song. Like how the fuck do you do that?
Yeah,
There's so much of what he does that it's the beauty of his writing that is what so many of the things where you're reading it, it's like, wow, that is an amazing piece of writing right there. It's like, well, okay, well, that's not a scene. That's writing.
yeah, that's that's hard. That's difficult to do.
And there's plenty of great scenes, but also there's great prose and great writing, and so it's gonna be a difficult story to crack. But let's see. So what we got next week? We're gonna get old basic lay Felurian.
Oh man, yeah. What a tactic! What a choice!
Yeah, he's gonna take a little dig at Felurian's ego. Man. It's such a hilarious way to manipulate her.
Yeah, it's so wild. But I mean, he already broke her, but this will break her forever. Basically, break her self-esteem down.
She's gonna be demanding every time she has sex with a new guy. She's like, "So, how was it?
Yeah.
What did you think?"
I was gonna say
full bore, like she's going full bore with her magic on every single guy, and they are like panting like dogs, like, huh?
Dude, the next one he's gonna be dead, and like after the first time, she's gonna fucking literally break him, and she's like, well, no complaints on that one.
Yeah, call me basic again, Kvothe. Think he thought I was basic? He couldn't even last 20 minutes with me.
Yeah, she started breaking dudes in half, man, just to bring that bring her groove back, right?
Be like telling Shaq, he can't dunk, and then he just starts ripping down rims. Like, say, I can't dunk. Tear this old goal down. Yeah. So I think that'll wrap her up this week, and we will be back to defend the face section some more next week.
Right on.
All right. Peace out, folks.
Yup.